Chapter 743. As expected of a god. Opening his mouth and spending a lot of money. This was an impossible mission. Including Qianli, 6 damage dealers and 80 priests. What kind of lineup was this? This was a lineup that wanted to build a great wall with flesh and blood. To be able to work in a studio, no matter how good or bad their equipment was or how high their level was, they were definitely not noobs. Looking at this lineup, they basically understood what was going on. The 80 priests had tears streaming down their cheeks. This job required them to be meat shields and receive the baptism of all the players in Cloud City. How is it? Are you guys confident? Gu Fei asked. No. The voices were loud and uniform. We have to be confident even if we don't. The money has already been paid. Gu Fei had a good impression of Ling Gufeng, so he chose to believe in his character. Other than the so-called buyout fee, everything else was paid in one go. This straightforward payment made Ling Gufeng have a good impression of Gu Fei, so he didn't continue to struggle with the buyout fee and stood up to speak for Gu Fei. There are only 4 NPCs left in the northeast camp. Everyone, do your best. This matter isn't as difficult as you guys think. Perhaps it was true that it wasn't difficult, but thinking that this was a mission that could be trampled on, everyone was still very painful. Someone suggested, Drunk Giant, why don't you just hire more people? We can attack and defend. Isn't that more efficient than these priests? Gu Fei patted his pocket. I'm out of money. Ling Gufeng suddenly became nervous and sent a message to Gu Fei. No money? Then the pension. You're so gullible. Are you still in the studio? Gu Fei looked down on him. Pretend I didn't say anything. But his suggestion is really good. Combining classes into a team, combining offense and defense, it's definitely more efficient than your current method. Ling Gufeng said. Gu Fei shook his head. First, I don't know how to command a team. Second, the players attacking the city are in the tens of thousands. I have to fight to support myself. How many people do I have to hire? Third, hurry up. I don't want to wait any longer. Okay. If you have something to say, just say it. This is the list of employers, 1 for each of us. I will mark the names of those who have withdrawn from the battle 25 times, and we will check after the battle. Would someone purposely die to earn money? Gu Fei said. Are you kidding me? Those who work in our Yunting studio have to abide by our employee code. We have a set of mutual supervision and reporting mechanism. We will never allow this kind of fraud to happen. Especially for a large-scale event like yours. We will also send someone to supervise from the side. You can rest assured. Everyone understands what your mission is about, and will definitely cooperate with you to complete it. I guarantee that even if we fail, it will definitely be due to our subjective reasons. Ling Gufeng said. Oh, that's good. Gu Fei nodded and asked, Which studio are you from? Ling Gufeng almost collapsed. After all this time, Gu Fei didn't even know which studio he was from. He didn't do a good job of maintaining his image. He quickly handed his name card to Gu Fei. Gu Fei took it and read it aloud. Ling Gufeng, HR assistant of Yunting Studio. That's my little brother. Ling Gufeng said. HR also sells scrolls? Gu Fei asked. The division of labor isn't that detailed. Since I'm the one who contacted you, I'll do it for you. Ling Gufeng said. While you're at it, promote your HR business. Gu Fei asked. Ling Gufeng laughed dryly. What's the relationship between Yingqi Studio and you? Gu Fei asked as he took the name card. He's our grandson. Ling Gufeng said seriously. Gu Fei suddenly had a good impression of him. He vigorously patted Ling Gufeng's shoulder and said, Good. If there's any business in the future, I'll look for you. Gu Fei had a good impression of this kid. He only hoped that the crows in the world were all black, and that this kid wasn't as shrewd as Wu Yi. If it wasn't like that, it would be really convenient and fast to deal with the studio. Let's go. Gu Fei called the team. He didn't have a commander, and he couldn't even be the captain. The team was built by others, but everyone knew who was in charge of the team. Everyone's here? This time, the 5 players beside Gu Fei were surprised. Everyone's here, Gu Fei said. What about the warriors? One of them asked. What do we need warriors for? Gu Fei didn't understand. Without warriors, Who's going to tank the monster's attacks? The 5 of them said in unison, apart from a slight difference in their wording. Gu Fei pointed at himself. You. The 5 of them were very orderly this time, and looked at each other. Although they brought a lot of priests, but with the mages' small bodies, would they be able to withstand a single slash from the guards? If they were instantly killed, then even 8,000 priests wouldn't be enough. Although the 5 of them knew that the guards' attacks weren't that high, they didn't forget that there were a total of 4 guards in the camp. The 5 of them wanted to ask more clearly, but Gu Fei had already walked in front of the team. The 80 priests didn't have the heart to worry about this matter, and silently followed him. The 5 of them hesitated, but still chased after him. In the end, they still asked this question. You'll know when the time comes. Gu Fei waved his hand, too lazy to explain. The northeast camp was right in front, and Gu Fei had already told everyone to split up. 80 priests gathered together was quite conspicuous. Do you guys think there's any problem with the tactics I've mentioned? I'm not very good at this. Gu Fei tried to be democratic in the team. You're really not good at it. We need a tank, we need a tank. The 5 DPS players shouted. And why don't you hire a few more DPSers? The more effective it is. There were other voices. So long-winded. Alright, I'll tell you guys. I understand what you're talking about a tank, but isn't it the one that attracts aggro? I heard that the warrior class can create a lot of aggro. One is through attack damage, and the other is through the pouring of rage. Both will be converted into aggro, right? Gu Fei said. Yes. Otherwise, the warrior may not be able to stabilize the aggro just by attacking. The main thing is that his rage consumption is additional aggro. Someone replied. Yeah, it doesn't matter what the setting is. The key is that as long as I'm attacking, the warrior definitely won't be able to attract any aggro. Gu Fei said. The 5 of them were startled at first, but then they came to a realization. Who was this person? Qianli was drunk. Instant kill of a level mage, and his attack damage was so high that it defied the heavens. This kind of explosive high damage output that surpassed the era and generated a lot of aggro. It wasn't something that the warriors of this era could snatch away by relying on damage and pouring out rage. Therefore, with an explosive damage output player like him, pulling aggro was a dream for the warrior. As for not having too many people participate in the battle, it's because I need enough space to move. If too many people surround me, it will compress my space. Without space, I won't be able to dodge the attacks and will die. Now do you guys understand? Gu Fei said. The last one understood, but this one, I don't quite understand. So even if I explain it, you guys won't understand. You'll understand when we fight. Is everyone in position? Gu Fei first asked these players to enter the camp. After all, they wouldn't cause any alarm. They're in. A series of messages appeared in the channel. How's the distribution of the guards? Gu Fei asked. XXX, XXX's position is closest to the edge of the camp. Let's start with that. Someone revealed to Gu Fei. Okay. Gu Fei adjusted the direction of advance according to the coordinates. Originally, the players in the northeast camp were afraid of being abandoned, so they set up a large number of camps. However, after they found out that the defending players were all suppressed within the city, they didn't waste time here, and did what they had to do. Apart from a few lazy players who volunteered to stay, the northeast camp was no different from the other camps. It was a place where players died, revived and reborn. When Gu Fei left the city, he noticed that the security in this place had been lowered, so he came up with this idea. I'm coming over. Everyone get ready. Gu Fei said. The preparation he was talking about was wearing a mask. This was an important way to get rid of the players after the battle was over, as well as to prevent any retaliation. I'm coming in. Gu Fei gave the last warning. Without the attention of any of the attacking players, he easily stepped into the camp that was already in danger. There was an NPC guard in front of him. The moment Gu Fei stepped into the camp, the guard immediately glared at him and shouted, "There's a spy infiltrating the camp," as he fiercely charged towards Gu Fei. Hurry up. Gu Fei also roared. Without any hesitation, he spun around and slashed at the guard with dual flame flash. The 5 DPS players were already on standby. As soon as they saw Gu Fei attack, the 2 thieves dashed behind the guard and unleashed backstab. The 3 mages also unleashed fireball after fireball. Even though it dealt a small amount of AoE damage, it wasn't much. In a situation where 80 priests were surrounding him, it would be a waste of time to care about this bit of damage. What's the guard's HP? The 5 DPS players obviously hadn't taken on this job. They hadn't participated in a city war before, so they didn't know anything about this. I don't know. Gu Fei's answer was very simple. The 5 players coughed up blood. You don't even know how much HP they have. How can you be sure that we can kill them in time? That's why we need to hurry up. Pay attention, the other 3 guards will be here soon. Priests, don't block them, let them in so they don't attack you. Gu Fei said. 1 against 4? Can you do that? The 5 were shocked. That's why I said we need space. Watch carefully, thieves, you too follow. Gu Fei said as he continued to slash at the guards. He firmly controlled his rhythm, determined not to let his mana run out. Just as Gu Fei had said, the other 3 guards came as reinforcements as fast as they could. The priests were extremely obedient, and they quickly made way for the guards. But at this time, the attacking players were even more anxious. News of the respawn camp being attacked had already spread, and the players in the northeast camp had already started to gather their weapons. Where was the target? Perhaps they needed to confirm it, but at this time the 80 masked priests squeezed into a circle, making the target very clear. They're coming. The priests cheered each other on. They weren't noobs. They were used to being cared for and protected in the team. They had never been on the front lines like warriors, so it was inevitable that they would be a little nervous. The attack had arrived. Seeing that it was a circle of 80 priests, even the most cowardly of players had the confidence to act wildly. They rushed forward and madly used all of their skills. The 80 priests clenched their teeth, supporting each other and healing each other. The holy white light formed a ring, resisting the flames, the arrows, the assassins hiding in ambush, and the charging warriors. Windless, help me keep an eye on the movements of the attacking players. Let me know when a large number of players return to camp. Gu Fei sent a message to Windless. I'm here myself. 80 people is a little too few. Gu Feng was also curious about whether Gu Fei could take down this camp, so he secretly followed him to watch the show. The sudden attack of the attacking players didn't seem to be able to take down the 80 priests for the time being. However, once the players gathered together and adjusted their attacks, Gu Feng felt that it would be a piece of cake to wipe out the 80 priests. Aya, we can't hold on any longer. Because of the continuous charge of a group of warriors, a gap was forcefully opened up in the protective circle of the 80 priests. When the players saw the priests forming a circle, they knew that they were protecting something. When they pushed open the circle, they saw a group of people hunting down the guards. A few warriors roared and rushed over to help. Back off. Gu Fei yelled at 2 thieves. He took 2 steps towards the warriors and turned around with dual flame flash. When the flames spread out, 3 warriors were killed and 2 were heavily injured. The 2 heavily injured warriors weren't careless at all. They unleashed whirlwind slashes together. However, they didn't expect Gu Fei to be even faster. Just as the blades were about to wrap around him, he raised his finger and teleported away. The 2 warriors' whirlwind slashes slashed at the guard behind Gu Fei. The guard had already locked onto Gu Fei. He didn't move away just because of the 2 whirlwind slashes. Instead, he turned around and slashed at Gu Fei. The 2 warriors hurriedly put away their whirlwind slashes and clumsily chased after Nie Yan. However, the 5 DPS players weren't here to be spectators. They moved together and killed the 2 warriors who were already on the verge of death. Gu Fei pulled the guard over. Dual flame flash's cooldown was up. With a circular movement, he evaded 3 more guards. He leaped into position and used a lightning palm to hit the head of a 4th guard. At this moment, Gu Fei didn't want to kill the guard. So he leaped into the air and chopped down diagonally, sending the guard sprawling to the ground. Gu Fei landed on the ground and brandished his sword. Ding ding. Bang. Bang. The 5 DPS players also came over to help. One of them turned to Gu Fei and shouted, "Don't keep pulling them like this. We won't attack those 3, so the aggro won't leave us. Just focus on one. It's just convenient. Gu Fei smiled. He still did whatever was convenient. Ever since the 3 guards had entered the circle, Gu Fei's attacks had taken care of every single one of them. The 5-man team that had been dealing damage thought that Gu Fei was trying to pull the aggro of the 3 guards. However, with Gu Fei's damage, a few skills would be enough to pull the aggro of the 3 guards. After that, everyone could just focus their firepower on one guard. However, Gu Fei was different. His attacks had always taken care of all 4 guards. The 5 DPS players had seen his footwork. It was truly erratic. They clearly saw him step to the left, but for some reason his body swayed to the right. As a result, the 2 thieves suffered. Their target was led left and right by Gu Fei. The 2 of them couldn't keep up at all. What are you 2 doing? Do you really have to pick one of the 4 guards? In the end, the 2 of them were criticized by Gu Fei. The 2 of them were startled. What was wrong with focusing on one of them first? Wanting to take down all 4 at once? Wasn't this a bit too much? The 3 of you too. Why do you always have to focus on one? Gu Fei called out to the 3 mages. The 3 mages fainted. Gu Fei couldn't be bothered to argue with this newbie's train of thought. Boss, let's do as he says. Otherwise, if the mission failed, it would be troublesome if the people didn't listen to orders. The 3 mages began to distribute their attacks evenly. Gu Fei expressed his satisfaction, but the priests couldn't hold on any longer. The attacking players no longer blindly bullied the enemy priests. As they gathered their manpower, they began to focus their firepower and break through. The priests finally realized that their human wall of 80 wasn't enough in the enemy's lair. If they focused their firepower, they would be instantly killed. 80 people? So what if they had 88,000? What they needed now wasn't the amount of regeneration, but the upper limit of their HP. Boss, I think you guys are in danger. As an outsider, Gu Fei could see the situation clearly. Mentally, he was biased towards Gu Fei. However, it seemed like the situation was already over. There's still a bit of time left. Can we kill one? If I can kill as many as I can, then I'll make a comeback and kill them all 4 times. Ling Gufeng was already thinking about his future. The priests were also in disarray. Many of the players in the outer circle had been killed. They respawned at the same camp, but not at the same spot. The priests who respawned at random would be the target of everyone if they didn't take off their masks. It was impossible for them to return to the camp and pretend to be the Great Wall. The priests all felt that Gu Fei's plan was childish, so childish that it was laughable. 80 priests weren't enough to form any sort of defense. It seemed like this guy was good at PvP, but he was a pig in team battles. Or maybe he just wanted to buy some time to kill one and make a comeback. That was what some people thought at first, but when they looked back at the circle, they were disappointed. Pig. What a pig. Not only did they not focus their attacks, but they also wanted to kill all 4 soldiers in one go. Dreams were beautiful, but reality was cruel. The 80 clerics could not provide that much support. Apart from the small gap when the enemy players gathered, the clerics could only hold on for a while. When the enemy players gathered in the hundreds or thousands, there was no way for them to survive. Alright, it's over. Looking at the densely packed crowd, the priests thought to themselves. Gu Feng craned his neck to see if Gu Fei had killed a single one. Masked man, let's go, Gu Fei suddenly said. Has he given up? Everyone thought to themselves, but no one dared to ask. The boss was probably not in a good mood. However, masked didn't mean that you weren't an enemy. At least you had to die once. Everyone covered their faces with their masks and only revealed their faces after they died. That way, no one would dare to identify you as an enemy, and your chances of escaping were greatly increased. Fire, arrows, whirlwind slash, assassinate. All sorts of attacks came like a tidal wave. The priests had already given up and were instantly wiped out. But in the empty space where the priests were wiped out, everyone saw that there were 4 system guards. They took on the abundant fire, arrows, whirlwind slash, assassinate. Fuck, stop, everyone stop. Someone among the attacking players shouted anxiously. The whirlwind slash and assassinate could be stopped, but the arrows and spells couldn't be stopped. Tens of thousands of attacking players completely dedicated their attacks to the 4 pitiful system guards. Chapter 744. Everyone was dumbfounded, including the 80 clerics and the 5-man DPS team. Only now did they realize that everything was just a pretense. The plan of clerics building the wall and killing the guards from within was just a facade. Thousand Miles Drunk's true goal was to lure the enemy into such an attack, which was why he had requested for the damage to be evenly distributed among the 4 guards. So that's how it is. This guy isn't as simple as violence. Ling Gufeng sighed emotionally at the side. He was just here to watch a show and didn't mind if things got out of hand. He originally thought that the plan to get drunk from 1,000 miles away had failed, but now that things had taken a turn for the better, he was a little excited. Shameless. Despicable. Despicable. The attacking players cursed, but there was nothing they could do to stop their attacks from being unleashed. The 4 guards were immediately engulfed in a sea of fire. Arrows pierced through their bodies, and they could not be more dead. At the same time, the system notification that sounded like a death knell rang again. Camp 4 has been captured. Kill the intruder in 5 minutes. Only then did the attacking players realize that things weren't over yet. They still had at least 5 minutes to turn the tables. But where was the target? The 80 priests all took off their masks, and no one could identify the target. Countless players began to curse that they had to rely on their face and badges to distinguish between friend and foe in this situation. All the priests shook the badges in front of them desperately, signaling to the other players that they were on their side, and not to accidentally hurt them. Even the 80 priests hired by Gu Fei did the same. But at this critical moment, the attacking players wouldn't be too careless anymore. They all used Identify on the priests, which immediately exposed their real and fake badges. Some people tried to kill the priests, but after killing them, the priests would respawn in another location. They didn't remember their faces, so they had to identify them again. At this time, Gu Fei had already changed his attire. He specially equipped himself with a thief's cloak. At this time, he covered his face, wielded a dagger, and nimbly darted around the field like a hunter looking for prey. The 4 guards had been brought into his attack range, but he used Blink to escape. He wanted to get through these 5 minutes. The identified priests were being killed miserably. Ling Gufeng sent a message to Gu Fei. The time these priests are really trying to buy is actually the 5 minutes, right? No. Gu Fei said. But now the attackers are focusing all their firepower on them, Windy said. That's because they're stupid. They're all reviving on the spot. It's clear that they're either neutral or attacking players. Defending players won't revive on the spot. Gu Fei said. Ling Gufeng was startled. Then where do I revive? There's a revival point in the city, Gu Fei said. Listening, Gufeng smiled bitterly. Only those who have died in and out of the city know about this setting. I'm afraid the players outside the city won't know about it. There must be someone who knows, Gu Fei said. Gu Fei was right. There were indeed some people who knew about this situation. At this time, they finally reacted. Don't kill indiscriminately. Those who resurrected on the spot can't be invaders. In such a messy guild organization, information had to be passed around. Who knew how long it would take for everyone to know about it? At this moment, the person who spoke didn't even bother to explain and immediately thought of an idea. All guild members, retreat from the camp. Hurry. After this idea was spread, everyone agreed. All the players quickly retreated out of the camp. The 80 priests and the 5 damage dealers also took this chance to escape. At this time, no one cared about them. All the players who had left the camp were staring at the battlefield. The system alarm hadn't been deactivated, which meant that this person was still in the camp. Now that everyone had left, where could he hide? The camp instantly became much more spacious. Occasionally, white lights flashed, but they were all players who had died and revived on the battlefield. Naturally, they couldn't be invaders. The players outside the camp looked into the camp and saw that there were more than 10 eye-catching tents. Without a doubt, the invaders were hiding in them. There's no time. Everyone hurry. Someone called out. The players outside the camp rushed into the camp like a tide and ran to the nearest tents. No. As the reports came in one after another, the countdown began. The attacking players were so anxious that their foreheads were covered in sweat. No. No here either. We don't have any here either. Fuck, how is that possible? None of them? All the players were dumbfounded. More than 10 tents were empty, but the system alarm hadn't been deactivated. While everyone was dumbfounded, the last 10 seconds of the countdown entered. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The heartless and unreasonable system announced. Siege Rebel Camp Number 4 has fallen. The camp has been abandoned. This area will retain the ability to go offline and save, but it will no longer be used as a resurrection area. Fuck. A chorus of curses could be heard from the wilderness outside of Cloud Peak. All of the players attacking the city received this system announcement. They really couldn't understand. There were more than 800 attacking guilds. Even if they encountered defending players that other main cities didn't have, they shouldn't have fallen to such a state. After the news of a siege camp being abandoned, the players in Cloud City were laughed at by players outside the city. This was a record. In the entire parallel world, there wasn't a main city attacking to this extent. In the end, their own record was broken. After a day, another resurrection camp in Cloud City fell. What are you doing? Trash. Trash. All the guild channels were filled with scolding messages. When the system notified them that Camp 4 had been attacked, almost all the guild leaders sent reinforcements. After all, Camp 4 was not as good as Camp 3. There were 4 NPC guards that could point out the targets for the players. Therefore, no one had expected this outcome. It was too late to say anything now. Ling Gufeng was also very confused. The resurrection camp was surrounded 360 degrees, and the only blind spots were those 10 or so tents. When the attacking players searched the tents, they didn't find anything. Where did Qianli hide? Ling Gufeng couldn't hold back his curiosity and asked Gu Fei for advice. It's very simple. At the start, I used a teleportation scroll to make a coordinate in the camp. When everyone left, I entered the tent, but I came out very quickly. I just didn't walk out. I used a teleportation scroll to teleport out. Understand? Gu Fei replied. I see. Ling Gufeng came to a sudden realization. It turned out that when everyone was searching for the resurrection camp with their eyes wide open, Gu Fei had brazenly appeared in front of them. However, everyone had treated this sudden appearance as a brother who had died on the battlefield. Gu Fei's cunning had exceeded their imagination. I don't think anyone died 25 times, right? Gu Fei asked Ling Gufeng. No. Ling Gufeng replied honestly. In fact, the battle ended very quickly. It wasn't easy to die 25 times. Then I'll see you again. After receiving Gu Fei's final reply, Ling Gufeng tried to find him in the crowd, but he couldn't find him. The surrounding players were all mad and irritable, and they wanted to kick anyone they saw. Ling Gufeng hurriedly left with the spirit of safety first. Gu Fei was actually quite busy. He didn't just have to run away. Camp 4 had been abandoned. This was announced to the entire city. However, to the defenders, it was a different story. They said that the heroic defending guild Amethyst had conquered the enemy's Camp 4. This area will still have a save function, but it will no longer be used as a resurrection area. Everyone was dumbfounded. The clerics sent him back to the city, but Gu Fei didn't reply. Many people sent him messages asking what he was doing, but Gu Fei only replied with, "I'm going for a stroll." Who knew that this stroll would result in such a big deal? At this time, the players who received the final notification from the system knew what had happened. They all sent congratulatory messages, which made Gu Fei restless. It's nothing. I just hired a few more people to take down the camp. Gu Fei briefly described his actions, which naturally attracted a lot of praise. What's the situation in the city? Gu Fei asked. Hee, even the clerics are here. Victory won't be far away. The arrival of the 40 clerics was very timely. At that time, the Han family young masters Rosy Cloud's team had already discovered some of the amethyst and exceedingly strong members. They chased after them all the way to the mailbox at the city gate. Then, the 40 clerics descended from the sky. Against the heavens and reborn purple crystal, had the upper hand in terms of numbers. Although the level of the members was uneven, Drifting, Thin Waist Dance, Strange Pupil, Southern Azure Flower, and other elites were stronger than first-rate elites. Between the Clouds did not have them. No matter how good the Han family young master's command was, he could not stop everyone from exploding at the same time. Moreover, Sword Ghost, Jian Nanyu, and even Yun Xiang were all good at commanding teams. The Han family's young master's advantage was not as great as when he was facing a normal team. If it was not for the fact that he was very heaven-defying and the reborn Amethyst Crystal's members were a little mixed up and unfamiliar, he would have been completely suppressed long ago. I'll be back soon. Gu Fei was still in his thief's outfit as he sprinted across the battlefield. Behind him, in the abandoned Camp 4, a bunch of people were going crazy. They wanted to drag the intruder out and skin him alive. The Han family young master knew that he was at the end of his rope. When the battle started and the 40 clerics suddenly joined the enemy's party, the Han family young master knew that they had no chance of winning. It seemed like they could still hold their ground, but it was all thanks to the enemy's unfamiliarity with the situation. Apart from that, the strongest fighter, Qianli's drunk, had yet to show up. The Han family young master patiently commanded and whittled down the enemy. Meanwhile, exceedingly strong and Amethyst immediately implemented the strategy that Drifting had thought of before they came into contact with the enemy. The clerics would attack from all over the map. This was equivalent to an enlarged version of Kenanyu and Flaming Cloak. Kenanyu led a few heavily armored warriors and stood at the front of the team. They did not need to attack. All they needed to do was to provide cover, and their lives would be taken care of by the 40 clerics. However, there were not only clerics behind them, but also elite clerics such as Drifting and Strange Pupil. There were no more clerics among the colorful clouds. They could no longer bombard the enemy in this map. The Han family young master could only command the archers to fire in unison while the team retreated to buy time. If it was just the archers, they could easily distance themselves. However, there were warriors and clerics among the colorful clouds party. It was impossible to kite them, and it was even more impossible to turn around and run away. The enemy's party did not lack thieves, archers, and other agility classes. Running away would only result in points for these classes. There was no hope of winning, but it was not easy to retreat safely either. The Han family young master frequently commanded the battle in the channel. He did not miss a single detail. The channel was filled with his orders. Similarly, the channel on against the heavens side was also filled with Sword Demon's orders. He would not let go of the details of his own side, let alone the details of the enemy's movements. These two old friends who knew each other very well could only rely on frequent changes of orders on the battlefield to make the enemy unable to figure out their intentions. The teams on both sides were crazy and irritable. The instructions were given so quickly that it was dazzling. Everyone wanted to say, "We are not robots. We are not robots that will immediately go down when you press the button, go up when you press the button, or go up when you press the button, or go up when you press the button." In comparison, it was still Sword Demon who lost. However, this was not because of him. It was because his subordinates were not a skilled team. Even so, Sword Demon's command still greatly restricted the intentions of the Han family young master. The deployment he wanted to make was more difficult than any of his usual commands. Sword Demon caused his deployment to be delayed, and no one would make up for his delay. On the Sword Demon's side, Jian Nanyu seized the opportunity that Sword Demon had won and led the warriors and mages to cooperate with the team to completely spread out the formation. The flames of the mages poured out wildly, and the entire street seemed to be burning. In the end, between the colored clouds could not resist anymore. They kept flashing white light, and people kept being killed. Han family young master had already issued a new order in the channel: retreat. Only retreat. Reviving from various resurrection points became a method of breaking up. After the players in between the colored clouds respawned at the resurrection points, they no longer returned to join the battle. They all ran toward the city gates that were closer to them. There were no ambushes at the resurrection points. Han family young master predicted that the enemy did not have enough numbers to set up an ambush at the resurrection points. The number of people on both sides was almost the same. Such a tactic could only be used when the enemy had the advantage in numbers. "Maybe we will meet again." Han family young master said to Sword Demon when he was killed. Sword Demon smiled. Very soon. After reviving in the Priest Academy, he had some companions with him. Han family young master and the others hurried toward the nearest East City gate. After walking for a while, Han family young master received a report from a player who had reached the East City gate first. There's someone at the East City gate. What? Han family young master was stunned. Although there aren't many people, Han family young master knew what he was worried about, but they were all priests. They did not have the ability to fight. The enemy might not have many people, but it was enough to stop the priests. What about the West City gate? How are you guys? Han family young master realized that breaking up and retreating didn't seem as good as it seemed. We are running, but there are already people chasing us from behind. The players at the West City gate seemed to want to cry. Thieves, archers, and other agility-related professions were all rushing in their direction. Sword Demon and Slender Waist dance, one black and one red, the two scariest thieves in the parallel world, were at the very front. Everyone could see them clearly. They couldn't go through the South City gate. This was something Han family young master had warned them about. Because they had started fighting at the mailbox of the South City gate, going through this gate was suicidal. What about the North Gate? We're almost out. The players at the North Gate were excited. Fuck. Clearly, something that made them unable to be excited happened. Qianli one drunk. It's Qianli one drunk. He's guarding the North Gate, someone shouted. He's not guarding the North Gate, he just happened to come back from outside the city. Han family young master said helplessly. The enemy didn't guard the revival point, so they chose to guard the city gate. They used the characteristics and location of the revival points in the main city to make a good arrangement. If it was him, this would probably be the best he could do, right? Han family young master thought. What do we do? The channel was in chaos. Go up the city wall, Han family young master said. Jump out. Everyone was shocked. That's right. You'll fall to your death. You'll revive after you die, Han family young master told him. Then won't you come back? Leave the guild and jump out of the city. You won't revive in the city, Han family young master said. This was the only way, but they had to give up their identity as the defender, which wasn't what they wanted. If they kept this identity, they could still do a lot of things. Unfortunately, if they kept this identity, they wouldn't be able to leave the city. They would be repeatedly killed by the very overpowered and reincarnated Amethyst until they flew to the 15th server. They had no other choice. The players in between colorful clouds changed their route and went up the city wall of Cloud City. Those who didn't join Little Ray's bar jumped off the wall without hesitation. Those who did join had one last bit of hesitation. What about Little Ray's bar? It's already been arranged. Jump over the wall, Han family young master said. Leave the guild and jump over the wall. With someone taking the lead, the others didn't hesitate anymore and started to implement it. Is there any problem on your side? Han family young master sent a message to Little Ray. No problem. But I have to trouble you with one thing. Tell Sword Demon that Little Ray's bar is no longer the one in between colorful clouds. It's now officially a business association, Little Ray said. Sure, but I can't guarantee what they'll think, Han family young master said. No problem. Qianli and Sword Demon are reasonable people. Little Ray was happy. Sword Demon received a message from Han family young master. We're retreating. The remaining people are the real Little Ray's bar members. What do you mean? Sword Demon replied in confusion, but the message was intercepted by the system. Sword Demon looked around and seemed to see figures on the city wall jumping off the wall. It's over. Sword Demon said in the channel. What's the situation? Countless voices asked. They're retreating, Sword Demon said. How is that possible? We've blocked all 4 city gates. They jumped off the wall, Sword Demon said. Won't they be resurrected? Not if they quit the guild, Sword Demon said. Little Ray's bar is disbanded? It doesn't seem like it. Sword Demon remembered Han family young master's last words. Chapter 745. Gu Fei found out in the channel that the other party had used the method of jumping off a building to escape the main city, and he felt that it was a pity. When he arrived at the north gate, he saw a few players rushing towards him. Before he could confirm their identities, they turned around and ran. Gu Fei naturally had a tacit understanding and chased after them to kill them. After that, he even played dirty and hid in a corner instead of standing at the gate. In the end, when people found out that there was a god like him at the north gate, they wouldn't come. Han family young master quickly made the decision to completely abandon the infiltration plan, and everyone retreated from the guild and jumped off the wall. However, the information he left behind about Little Ray's bar made Sword Demon a little confused. After telling everyone, Gu Fei directly sent a message to ask Little Ray. Xiao Lei hurriedly explained. The gist of it was that the young master of the Han family had helped to establish the guild. Now that they had retreated, Xiao Lei had already formed his own team. From now on he would focus on questing and not hold up Gu Fei and the others. Can we believe it? Gu Fei asked after relaying Little Ray's words to everyone. Everyone shook their heads. Obviously, they didn't have much confidence in the Han family young master's character. They felt that he was up to something again. In the end, only Sword Demon nodded and said, Gongzi is fine. As for Little Ray, I can't say for sure. What do you mean? Everyone asked. What I mean is that this step can't be something that Gongzi came up with. But whether or not Little Ray has his own plans, I don't know. Sword Demon said. You're that sure? Everyone asked. I'm sure that Gongzi's plan about Little Ray's bar should end here. Sword Demon said. Sword Demon's character was obviously very reassuring. Seeing his guarantee, they immediately felt that there was no problem, so they began to analyze Little Ray's problem. Little Ray, there should be no problem, right? In the eyes of the Sword Demon, Little Ray was a good comrade. Intuitively, he felt that Little Ray should be fine. I hope so. Why don't we ask everyone to pay more attention? Jian Nan suggested. Sword Demon nodded. Hence, both guilds made an announcement that the other party had been repelled. However, there were still some members of Little Ray's bar remaining. They would have to observe them further to see if they held any hostility towards them. They advised everyone to be careful, but not to provoke them. This matter has finally come to an end. Sword Demon let out a long sigh. The pressure was immense. A guild that had just been established had to face such a challenge. Even if they lost, it wouldn't necessarily disband them. However, it would still cause these newly recruited fresh blood to lose confidence. If a guild wanted to develop and grow, it must first let the guild members realize the value of the guild. It was very overpowered, so it was obvious that they had survived this hurdle. On the other hand, on the side of the reborn Amethyst, July had already begun to discuss with Gu Fei how to deal with the aftermath. Previously, when the situation was critical, they had temporarily given up on their dream of a pure female guild. Now that things had calmed down, it was really a technical problem to restore the reborn Amethyst to its original state. Kick them all out. Gu Fei was quite inhumane. That's not good. July wiped her sweat. Recruiting people to be soldiers and then kicking them out after the battle. That was a little too inhumane. Oh, I thought that was what you were going to do. Gu Fei said. July was extremely depressed. Did she look like such an inhumane person? I don't have any opinion on this matter. You guys do as you see fit. Gu Fei was a hands-off boss. The title of the most irresponsible guild leader in history was none other than him. July was at her wits' end. Fortunately, these newly joined male players hadn't revealed their wolfish nature as soon as the battle ended. If they were really like immortal among flowers, July would only be left with the thought of killing herself. On the side of the overpowered, Sword Demon and a few other experts were also discussing the future development of the guild. Since there were two guilds, Sword Demon simply formed a team and gathered all the knowledgeable experts from both sides for a conference. This is a chance. Now that there's no competition for the guild quests in the main city, it's a heaven-sent chance to raise the guild's level. Are we going to miss this opportunity? Brother Yu suggested. Even if there's competition for guild quests, there's always competition. Right now we're in the middle of a city war. Even though we're facing a special opportunity, I feel like we should still focus on the city war quests. Drifting said solemnly. He, Qianli, didn't fly over to help the overpowered guild level. Drifting was firmly against doing something like this when there was a city war. Cough cough, I'll also say a few words. Southern Azure Sword said. Even though we mysteriously ended up in the position of the defending side, and caused some trouble for the attacking side, looking at it from an overall perspective, I feel like the attacking side's victory was the predetermined result of this city war. The winner receives the reward. This has always been the game's iron rule. As the losing side, will we receive a reward? Or will we only receive a consolation prize? Everyone here is the ashes of the game. I don't think anyone will be interested in consolation prizes, right? You're absolutely right. Brother Yu immediately nodded his head in support. That's why I said that there's no point in worrying about the guild quests. We should take this chance to raise the guild's level and look at the long term. That's not what I meant. Southern Azure Sword hastily said. Ha. Brother, you didn't understand. What I meant was that we can't just randomly do city defense quests. Our goal is to defeat the attacking side and find quality quests to do. Southern Azure Sword said. Are you crazy? Brother Yu was shocked. He didn't think that Southern Azure Sword would also set his goal as defeating the attacking side. Wasn't this something that only Qianli would do? Ha ha ha. Drifting laughed. I like your thoughts, brother Southern Azure Sword. We might not have enough people, but our quality is high. I think that with our warrior, mage and priest combination, we'll be invincible outside the city. Isn't that right, brother Southern Azure Sword? Southern Azure Sword glanced at Drifting and said, my thoughts are based on reality, not this kind of unrealistic fantasy. Ha ha ha. This time it was Yutian Shenming who laughed. I like your thoughts, brother Southern Azure Sword. Let those unrealistic idiots go to hell. Children shouldn't interrupt when adults are talking, Drifting said. Fuck, do you dare to come and fight me? Yutian Shenming jumped up. I'll wait for you in the arena, Drifting said. Wait for me. Yutian Shenming immediately set off. This is the arena? Love Left Hand, who was next to Drifting, asked. He's just a kid. I was just teasing him and he took it seriously, Drifting said. They were hundreds of thousands of miles away from the arena to Qianli. Qianli, what do you think? Sword Demon saw that everyone had an opinion, so he asked Gu Fei. Do you still need to say Qianli's opinion? Brother Yu cried. I like the idea of destroying the attacking side. Gu Fei said. Southern Azure Sword hurriedly corrected him. Not destroying them, but winning. Our goal is to let the defending side win. That's about right, Gu Fei said. But our focus should be on the quest. Southern Azure Sword mumbled weakly. Speaking of the quest, Sword Demon, Gilgino is dead. He was killed by a player. How do you think we should continue with the quest? Gu Fei said. How do we continue with the quest? You should ask the person who issued the mission. The Sword Ghost said. Oh, then I'll go take a look, Gu Fei said as he walked towards the main city hall. If we're doing the quest, it won't be easy to leave the main city. The attacking side won't relax their guard on the city gates anymore, brother Yu said. I have 20 teleportation scrolls with coordinates outside the city, Gu Fei announced. I want one, I want one, I want one. The shouting continued. 1,000 gold each, Gu Fei said. Fuck. The cursing continued. This is sponsored by the Han family young master. Yutian Shenming protested. The Han family young master's money is also money. Gu Fei sincerely lectured Yutian Shenming. The scrolls will naturally be given to everyone when we need them. Don't fight over them. Sword Demon comforted everyone. Let's do the quest. Southern Azure Sword suggested again. With Gu Fei's support, the opposing voices became much smaller. As a result, Amethyst, who defied the natural order, set a goal of defeating the attacking side. This was an unrealistic goal in the eyes of most people, and they began to split up. They also pointed out that if they discovered a major quest, they had to report it to the organization, and everyone would work together to complete it. This way, they wouldn't waste resources or cause the loss of the guild's assets. All of the players got busy in the city. Gu Fei once again came to the guard room. Report, Gokino is dead. Gu Fei reported to the captain. The captain was furious and heavily punched his desk. Gu Fei thought he would receive a storm of scolding from the NPC, but he didn't expect the captain to say, "Damn it! These cruel bandits." Gu Fei didn't react for a moment. After a slight pause, he realized that the cruel bandits were referring to the bandits outside. However, to be honest, Gu Fei didn't feel that Gilkino was a character with integrity. He helped the defenders, but at the same time he didn't seem to reject the attacking side's requests. He was guiding both sides of the quest. This guy was a complete opportunist. Now that the opportunist was dead, what would happen to the quest? But it's fine. The captain's expression relaxed. We just received new information. Gilkino's assistant has also appeared outside Cloud City. This is where he is. As soon as Qianli is drunk, immediately contact him. Maybe he will give us the help we need in Gilkino's place. The guard captain handed over a piece of paper. Gu Fei glanced at a set of coordinates and was disappointed to the extreme. Looking for someone again? Are there any combat quests? Go for freedom. The guard captain passionately clenched his fist and cheered for Gu Fei. Gu Fei ran away like a bolt of lightning. I've received another follow-up. Gu Fei sent a message in low spirits. There's a follow-up? Good. What's the content? The sword demon was excited. Based on his many years of gaming experience, he could feel that the quest on Gu Fei wasn't ordinary. Timings, continuous follow-up, two-way quests, many things that symbolized the difficulty of the quest in the parallel world all appeared on Gu Fei's quest. Moreover, the person who issued the quest clearly stated that it would be of great help to the city defense. It was very much like what the city defense side needed. Looking for someone again. Looking for Gilkino's assistant. Gu Fei said. Then hurry up and go. The sword demon said. Does anyone else want to go? Gu Fei asked. Me. Slender Waist Dance raised her hand. This girl wasn't interested in her own quest. She would rather pick a ready-made one to follow along. The quest might not be as simple as looking for someone. Maybe there will be some more difficult battles. How about we get a more complete team? The sword demon suggested. Thus, Jian Nan, Drifting, Strange Pupil Luoluo, and the others all volunteered. You don't have speed. Gu Fei said. The group of experts was so angry that they all cursed. Gu Fei wasn't moved. He wanted to be faster. He didn't want to drag a group of short legs. You don't even want a cleric? The sword demon reminded. Why do we need a cleric? Gu Fei asked. Luoluo swore that she would never heal Gu Fei. Yu Tian. Gu Fei called out. Wait, I still have a duel. Yu Tian Shiming said. What duel? Do you really believe what people say? Hurry up and come. Gu Fei scolded. Thus Yu Tian Shiming scolded Drifting. Drifting had no choice but to turn off the channel and contact the others privately. What about you, Sword Demon? I'll stay in the city. The Sword Demon was a good and serious leader. He wanted to stay in the city and lead the guild in the excavation quest. Xiaozhu. Gu Fei looked for her again. I'm ignoring you. Yan Xiaozhu's sister had just been looked down upon by Gu Fei, and it triggered a chain reaction. Glue. Gu Fei even picked experts. Under Jian Nanyu's coercion, Glue did not make a sound and pretended to be dead. Under Willow. Gu Fei thought of another. There was no reply. Under Willow wasn't in this channel. This was a knowledgeable expert team. Under Willow wasn't added. Gu Fei was about to return to the Rebirth Amethyst channel to call when someone finally said, I'll go. Gu Fei was delighted. He looked at the name and saw that it was Shi Xiaotian. He pretended not to see. Anyone else want to go? Shi Xiaotian was furious. Everyone in the channel had been offended by Gu Fei. Alright, you forego. The sword demon couldn't stand it anymore. Gather at the central plaza. Gu Fei was helpless. No one responded to him. Even Rebirth Amethyst ignored him. Gu Fei saw that Luoluo had spoken. In the city, everyone got busy again. Outside the city, the Han family young master led everyone to jump off the city walls. They fell to their deaths and revived at the revival camp outside the city. Thank you for your hard work. When the Han family young master came out of the camp, he bumped into Gu Xiaoshang. We failed. The Han family young master shook his head. At least we stalled them for a while. The other guilds don't have to worry. The city war went well, Gu Xiaoshang said. Not bad. Didn't the northeast camp fall? The Han family young master said. That was the result of our previous mistakes. It would have happened sooner or later, Gu Xiaoshang said. You're quite optimistic, the Han family young master said. Gu Xiaoshang smiled. Someone has been waiting for you. Oh, who is it? The Han family young master was surprised. Over there. Gu Xiaoshang pointed and brought the Han family young master over. The two of them leaned against the tree beside the campsite as if they were enjoying the shade. When they saw young Master Han's figure from afar, they walked over together. It's you guys. The Han family young master frowned. Yeah, long time no see. The city war was amazing. The two were Yi Xiaowu and Water-Breaking Arrow. What can I do for you? The Han family young master asked. I heard that your mercenary group seems to be on a different side. Yi Xiaowu smiled. I heard. The Han family young master looked at Gu Xiaoshang. Gu Xiaoshang shrugged, indicating that she didn't say anything. So what? The Han family young master asked. Hee, now you can feel the imbalance of Qianli's drunkenness, right? Yi Xiaowu said. So what? If it's not balanced, of course it needs to be balanced, Yi Xiaowu said. Oh, then go ahead. The Han family young master turned around and was about to leave. Wait. Yi Xiaowu was startled and hurried to catch up. The Han family young master frowned and looked at him. You're really long-winded. Let me tell you, we're on the same side. It's a game. Only your position is different. You're hindering our game, understand? As long as Qianli's drunkenness is here, there's no fair environment, Yi Xiaowu said. With you, the GM, there's no fair environment either, the Han family young master said. GM? Gu Xiaoshang was confused. That's the one. The Han family young master pointed. Why is the GM in the game? Gu Xiaoshang was surprised. I'm not the GM. Yi Xiaowu was depressed. Not to mention that he had already resigned. Even before he resigned, his position was completely different from a low-level character like the GM. But obviously, in the hearts of ordinary players, the GM was the main god of the game. It was as if they were in charge of everything in the game. Everyone, come and look. There's a GM here. The Han family young master shouted. Ding. Countless players were even more excited when they heard this name than when they heard the super boss, Qianli's drunkenness. They all looked over. The young master of the Han family pointed at Yi Xiaowu with an unmistakable gesture. The players rushed over and surrounded Yi Xiaowu inhumanely. This is the GM? TSK, his level is so low. His equipment isn't that great either. I'm not the GM. I'm also an ordinary player. Yi Xiaowu was going crazy. The players didn't believe him. It was said that the GM could transform into any form in the game. Of course, that included transforming into a player. GM, why don't you use some big moves? GM, I suddenly lost 20 gold coins. Help me see where they went. GM, please show me the right path. Tell me where the big quest is. The players all prayed to the GM. They almost burned incense sticks. I'm not the GM. Yi Xiaowu emphasized repeatedly, but no one believed him. The onlookers came one after another. Water-Breaking Arrow surrendered at the side. He calmly stood to the side and pretended to be an onlooker. At least it was better than being watched. Make way. Make way. At this time, an important figure finally arrived. The guild leaders of the 4 major guilds had never separated after leaving the cabbage field. When they heard that there was a GM on the east side of the city, they immediately ran over to take a look. As expected of the guild leaders, the 4 of them had deep thoughts. A strange force like the defending players had appeared in Cloud City. Now that the GM had appeared, was he preparing to eliminate this BUG? Sword Without Oath against the current Unchung Mutsu and Black Index Finger. The 4 of them squeezed into the crowd and stood in front of Yi Xiaowu. With the appearance of the 4 guild leaders, the commotion in the crowd lessened. Yi Xiaowu once again weakly repeated, I'm not the GM. Then who are you? Why does everyone say you're the GM? Sword Without Oath asked. It's the Han family young master. That guy tricked me, Yi Xiaowu said. Oh. The four people who were all tricked by the Han family young master instantly resonated. Chapter 746. Why did he trick you? The four guild leaders studied Yi Xiaowu with great interest. They felt that there must be something special about this guy. Otherwise, if an ordinary character met a young master of the Han family, they would be scorned to the point of banging their heads against the wall with just a few words. Being able to be fooled could be considered a rather high treatment. You are? Yi Xiaowu was not a great character in the game. He might know the names of the four guild leaders, but he would not know these people. After the four introduced themselves, Yi Xiaowu nodded and said, "It's not convenient here. Can we talk somewhere else?" The four guild leaders exchanged glances. Looking at this trash cleric, he seemed to have some confidence in himself. The four of them wanted to see if he was the real deal or not. Let's go. There's no GM. The crowd gradually dispersed under the banishment of the four guild leaders. The four stared at Yi Xiaowu, wanting to hear what this kid had to say. Gu Fei, Yutian Shenming, Shi Xiaotian, and Slim Waist Dance used scrolls to easily get out of the city. This was the secluded place where Gu Fei and Ling Gufeng traded scrolls. It was a little far from the battlefield, but it would not attract attention. Slim Waist Dance checked the current coordinates and asked for the location marked on Gu Fei's scroll. She was furious. "You pig! How far apart are these two? Why are you flying here?" Shi Xiaotian glanced over, and also showed a look of disdain. "Humph!" Yutian Shenming glanced over and snorted. "What are you snorting about? Do you know which direction the coordinates are on the paper?" Gu Fei was furious. It was fine if others laughed, but Yutian Shenming also made a fuss. He really did not know his place. Yutian Shenming was stubborn and refused to admit his mistake. He took the paper from Gu Fei and studied it. Gu Fei explained to the other two, "I can't help it. I didn't leave the city for a vacation. How would I know that the location of the mission would be there?" "Are you a pig? Can't you buy some scrolls with coordinates?" Slim Waist Dance said. "Is there such a thing?" Gu Fei asked. "Why don't you ask?" Slim Waist Dance said. Next time, Gu Fei hurriedly said. At this moment, Yutian Shenming's research bore fruit and he laughed. "Who says I don't know? Isn't it over there?" "Piss off." Gu Fei snatched the paper back. "I looked at it for 2 minutes and saw that it's still wrong." After speaking, he walked in the opposite direction from Yutian Shenming. Yutian Shenming felt wronged and hurriedly caught up to Gu Fei. "Boss, you know I'm not good in this. Just save me." "Who started it first?" Gu Fei asked. "I was wrong, okay?" Imperial Sky Shenming turned around and saw the two beauties whispering behind him, laughing so hard that they were probably laughing at him. He was so depressed that he wanted to die. Gu Fei and the others teleported to the northeast of Cloud City, and the destination given by the guard was in the southwest. The four of them had to make a big circle. Gu Fei saw that Sword Ghost and the others were very serious about this quest, and he didn't want to disappoint them. So he took the proper attitude and headed straight for the destination with the thought that it was better to avoid unnecessary trouble. However, Slender Waist Dance did not have such a sense of responsibility. Along the way, she pointed at the battles on the battlefield a few times, encouraging the other three to take a shortcut with her and directly kill their way through the battlefield. Shi Xiaotian smiled but didn't say anything. Gu Fei rolled his eyes, and Yutian Shenming wanted to please her, but under Gu Fei's stern gaze, he had to shut up. Slim Waist Dance was in a depressed mood and kicked stones all the way. From time to time, she would accidentally kick Gu Fei. Gu Fei resisted the urge to send the girl back to the main city. At least he knew that Slim Waist Dance often had a little temper when she was unhappy, but at least she wouldn't mess things up at a critical moment. "If there's no battle here, I'll kill you." Slim Waist Dance threatened Gu Fei more than once on the road. Gu Fei finally couldn't help but sigh. "Do you think I don't want to?" "What?" "I hope there's a battle. I hope I can kill you," Gu Fei said. "You're courting death." Slim Waist Dance kicked Gu Fei 3 times. "We're almost there. Stop messing around." Shi Xiaotian tried to calm Slim Waist Dance down. Yutian Shenming also came over, expressing his admiration for Gu Fei and Slim Waist Dance, getting along. Gu Fei rolled his eyes. It's over there. Shi Xiaotian glanced at the piece of paper in Gu Fei's hand and pointed ahead. There's no one. Gu Fei quickly walked in this direction. This area was called the Cloud Suburb Mine. It was a place for leveling. There were NPC miners between level 40 to 45 active. At the same time, it was also a place where siege quests often appeared. There were many repeatable labor quests in the mine for players to complete. At this time, Gu Fei took a few steps and stood in the area marked on the paper. There was nothing in front of him except a miner carrying a shovel. This is the entrance to the mine. It looks like the person we're looking for is inside the mine, Shi Xiaotian said. Looks like it. Gu Fei was helpless. Fortunately, the Cloud Suburb Mine wasn't too big. It wouldn't take too long to walk around. The four of them came closer and saw some players leveling. There were also some players busy shoveling slag and pushing small mining carts. They were clearly characters for the siege quests. Let's disguise ourselves a bit, Shi Xiaotian suggested. Yeah, Gu Fei nodded, and instantly changed into the thief's cloak that he had used before, and covered his face. Where did you get this tattered clothing? It's so ugly. Slim Waist Dance laughed. She casually changed into another set of clothing. It was also a high-quality one. It complemented her figure, and the style was quite nice. Shi Xiaotian also changed into a tattered thief's cloak and covered his face. Yutian Shiming didn't prepare these things and didn't know what to do. Gu Fei glanced at him and said, "Forget it. I don't think anyone will recognize you." Yutian Shiming was depressed. However, this was the truth. Yutian Shiming didn't have a name above his head. No matter how famous he was, how many of the hundreds of thousands of people in the city would recognize him? He wasn't a celebrity. Even if he was Gu Fei or Slim Waist Dance, it was mainly because of his attire. Thinking of his attire, Yutian Shinming's unyielding heart started beating again. He pulled on the 3 bows on his back and said, "Isn't this too eye-catching? Everyone will know it's me. What should I do?" Gu Fei glanced at him and said, "Put it in your pocket." Yutian Shinming wanted to cry. He accidentally showed off his intelligence again. The 2 beauties laughed again. Just like that, the 4 of them entered the mine. They pretended to fight monsters while walking around the mine. "You're a thief now. Don't use magic." Slim Waist Dance reminded Gu Fei. "I know," Gu Fei said. Hee. Slim Waist Dance smiled meaningfully. "I can still kill you without magic." Gu Fei said the truth. "You have no manners. Would it kill you to give in once in a while?" Slim Waist Dance scolded. "Manners? When has he ever had one?" Shi Xiaotian said. Yutian Shiming nodded in agreement. Gu Fei ignored the 3 of them and focused on his task. The 4 of them killed monsters and walked around the mine. They didn't find anything besides normal monsters. There are only those NPCs. Could it be one of them? Shi Xiaotian pointed to the other side. There were some non-combat NPCs giving out quests to the players. Let's go take a look. Gu Fei led the team in that direction. Logically speaking, there were many monsters in the mine, and there were players here. Even though some monsters would respawn, they were a hindrance and inconvenient to fight. No one would kill the monsters here. However, Gu Fei and the others didn't care if they were suspicious or not. They killed monsters all the way here, and led the monsters to the NPC. "Gilkino is dead." Gu Fei didn't know how to probe. He only thought of this line. Since they were Gilkino's assistants, there should be some reaction. As a result, Gu Fei acted like he was reading a secret code and approached the NPCs one by one. No reaction. No reaction. None of the NPCs responded. On the other hand, the surrounding players began to look at them strangely. These 4 were killing monsters and leveling, but they were circling around the NPC. It was a bit strange. The 4 couldn't care less. Seeing that the NPC was about to finish asking, he became a little anxious. At this moment, Gu Fei threw out another, "Gilkino is dead." The NPC didn't respond. A sloppy miner who was squatting on the ground and digging at the ore pile suddenly turned his head and said, "He's dead." The 4 were shocked. The 4 of them were shocked. Was this an NPC? They hadn't noticed and thought it was a player who was squatting on the ground and digging for slag. That's right. He's dead. Gu Fei hurriedly followed up. The young man's expression was puzzled and surprised at first. After receiving confirmation from Gu Fei, his expression instantly changed to one of joy. He wiped his face with his sleeves and said, "This old thing is really dead? Then my plan can finally be carried out." Ha 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 ha. The four were shocked. They didn't know what was wrong with this NPC. They saw him, who was squatting on the ground, spring up like a spring. He jumped up a small slope several meters high. Oh, he's an expert. Gu Fei was pleasantly surprised. Without saying anything else, he used teleportation and chased after him. Qianli is drunk. The players who had been paying attention to these four people all shouted. All the players who were attacking the city had received guidance from the guild to recognize people. They were familiar with the characteristics of Qianli: black robe, black longsword, teleportation, and lightning magic. The guild leader of Shepherd of Clouds, Uncheng Mutsu, added a fifth characteristic. It said that when Qianli was drunk, there was a pile of feces on his head. Those who were rational all thought that Uncheng Mutsu lost his mind because of Qianli and slandered him to vent his anger. Therefore, this new characteristic didn't spread. Among the four characteristics, teleportation was the most absolute. In Cloud City, there was no other person besides Qianli who could do this. Therefore, when Gu Fei teleported up the slope, all the players screamed. After the screams, they panicked and reported the situation to their guilds. Gu Fei didn't care about them. When he got up the slope, he saw that Gilkino's assistant didn't stop and was running for his life. Gu Fei shouted and stopped, then chased after him. Slender Waist Dance and the others weren't as carefree as these two. They were already a few steps behind when they climbed up the slope. The three of them chased after them. Yutian Shenming had already drawn his bow and asked loudly, "Are you going to shoot?" "Shoot," Gu Fei shouted. "Don't do anything stupid." Shi Xiaotian hurriedly stopped him. "My quest or your quest?" Gu Fei was furious. "The guild's quest," Shi Xiaotian reminded. "I have a quest notification." Gu Fei roared. He wasn't that noob yet. As soon as this new NPC appeared, he immediately ran. Gu Fei chased after him while opening the quest window to check. The parallel world quest notification that had always been concise and comprehensive always gave a single sentence. It turned out that the guard captain's find order was no longer there. Instead, it was replaced by a stop order. "Coming." Yutian Shenming responded and released an arrow. The arrow whistled through the air and hit the miner's back. The miner suddenly turned around. With a fierce expression, he roared at the four players, "Don't even think about stopping me." As soon as he finished speaking, he dashed forward and slapped Gu Fei, who was the first to reach him. "Come at me." Gu Fei took a step to the side to avoid the slap. He swung his sword and was about to counterattack, but the slap suddenly twisted around and hit Gu Fei's head. The strength of the slap was so great that Gu Fei couldn't block it at all. With a thud, he was slapped to the ground. Slim Waist Dance and the other two players stopped in their tracks in shock. They discovered that when the miner slapped Gu Fei's arm, the joint was twisted in an unimaginable way. It was basically bent upside down. For a human, a bent arm could only be broken. What the hell is this? Gu Fei, who was lying on the ground, raised his head to look at the miner's arm. He didn't expect the miner to do something that went against the structure of the human body. Crack. With a crisp sound, the miner used his other hand to bend the bent arm back. At the same time, he raised his leg and stepped on Gu Fei. Gu Fei hurriedly rolled away. The miner chased after him and continued to attack. Gu Fei rolled left and right, but he didn't have a chance to stand up. He looked up and saw that the three players were standing to the side, staring blankly. Gu Fei felt depressed. "Do you three want to come over and step on me as well?" The three of them seemed to wake up from a dream. Yutian Shenming hurriedly knocked his bow and released another arrow. This time, it hit the miner's head. The miner let out a strange cry and waved his hand to pull out the arrow. He then threw it directly at Yutian Shenming. The arrow was not much slower than Yutian Shenming's own arrow. However, its accuracy was slightly poor. Yutian Shenming ducked his head and dodged the arrow. Cold sweat broke out all over his body. However, The miner was already charging at him. Yutian Shenming turned around and wanted to run. However, the miner activated his spring jump again. This time, however, he didn't crouch down. Everyone understood what was happening. The miner had bent his body and bent his legs several times. Shi Xiaotian and Slim Waist Dance almost vomited when they saw this. Then he straightened his legs and the miner shot forward like a cannonball. Yutian Shenming cried out in shock. However, he couldn't react in time, and was pounced on by the miner. Turning around, he saw the miner's mouth open above his head. It looked like he was going to eat his head. Imperial Heaven Divine Ming let out a series of dual flame flash. Gu Fei arrived in time and heavily slashed at the miner. The miner was injured. He stretched his neck and roared. A large drop of saliva finally came out of his mouth. Yutian Shenming was pinned down by the miner. He couldn't move at all. He tried to turn his head to the side. However, his face was cold. The saliva finally fell on his face. Ugh! The two girls' faces were pale. They retched at the same time. Yutian Shenming was also gritting his teeth. However, after paying attention for a moment, he cried out, "Damn, it's still hurting." "What?" Gu Fei asked. "Saliva." Yutian Shenming cried out. "Then be careful. It's going down again," Gu Fei said. "What?" Yutian Shenming turned his head. A ball of saliva hit his face, blurring his vision. "Hurry and save me." Yutian Shenming couldn't even cry. His eyes were filled with saliva. "You two hurry and help." Gu Fei turned around and yelled at the two girls. Yutian Shenming was sprayed with saliva again. This worsened their symptoms. When he heard Gu Fei's yell, he reluctantly picked up his weapon and rushed over. He kept retching along the way. "Stop retching. Retch even more disgusting than him." Gu Fei roared. "What did you say?" Slim Waist Dance was furious. She rushed over and slashed at the miner. "Say it again." "Not bad. Continue," Gu Fei praised. However, the miner wasn't one to take a beating without fighting back. He swung his arm over. Gu Fei lowered his head. Slim Waist Dance also lowered her head. However, his forearm suddenly dropped down. It was another action that humans couldn't do. However, this time, Gu Fei was prepared. He rolled backwards to avoid it. As a result, his drooping forearm swung to the side like a swing. With a paw, he slapped Slim Waist Dance across the face. "I'm going to kill you." Slim Waist Dance jumped up and swung her dagger wildly. She slashed the miner twice and suffered another slap at the same time. Yutian Shenming took the opportunity to escape. He dashed to Shi Xiaotian's side. He didn't forget to please the beauty. "Sister Tian, be careful." Shi Xiaotian glanced at him and tossed him a piece of cloth. "Wipe your face." Yutian Shenming quickly wiped his face and shouted at Slim Waist Dance, "Sister, be careful of your saliva." "Mouth my ass." Slim Waist Dance's dagger was aimed at the miner's mouth. However, the miner suddenly opened his mouth and bit down on the dagger. He then stretched out his arms to give her a hug. Slim Waist Dance wanted to let go of the dagger. How could she bear to do that? Fortunately, Gu Fei arrived in time. He slashed the miner's throat with his sword. Then, he slapped the miner's head with a lightning palm. The miner was knocked back. However, his bite was shockingly strong. He managed to bite down on Slim Waist Dance's dagger and retreated with her. "Let go of me." Slim Waist Dance's ferocious spirit was stimulated. She passed the dagger to her assistant and reached into her pocket with her main hand. She pulled out another dagger and stabbed it at the miner's left eye. With a pu sound, the dagger went straight into the miner's eye. Dark green blood sprayed out. The miner was in pain and began to howl. Slim Waist Dance took the opportunity to pull back her dagger. However, she was frightened by the miner's ferocious face and quickly retreated. "What is this thing?" Slim Waist Dance asked with lingering fear. "It's not a human," Shi Xiaotian said. I hate this kind of thing the most." Gu Fei frowned. The parallel world was dominated by humanoid creatures. Apart from that, there were also some animals and fantasy monsters. It would take some effort for Gu Fei to deal with these monsters. Although the miner in front of him had a humanoid form, he was clearly a non-human creature from another world. Chapter 747. The dagger that slender-waist dance used to stab the miner's eye did not appear to be a precious equipment. After stabbing the miner's eye, she did not take it and left it on the miner's forehead. The miner seemed to have lost the ability to speak. He could only howl and shake his head violently. Thick green blood was constantly flung out of his eye sockets, and the dagger was also flung out bit by bit. Dual flame flash. Gu Fei raised his sword and charged forward. In the eyes of a professional, the miner's body was full of openings. After chanting a spell, Miner Fan swung his head in Gu Fei's direction. The dagger stuck in his eye flew towards Gu Fei's face with a lump of green substance. Gu Fei tilted his head and dodged the dagger. However, he was unable to avoid being splashed by the green substance. Even saliva could cause damage, let alone something even more disgusting. Gu Fei felt a burning sensation on his face, and his life force began to decrease by the second. This green substance is poisonous, Gu Fei said to the three. He turned his head and saw that the three of them did not seem to have any intention of attacking. They simply watched from afar. Hearing Gu Fei's words, Slender-Waist Dance hastily turned her head to look at the other two. How is it? Did I get splashed by it? Yutian Shenming watched Slender-Waist Dance closely and shook his head. No. It's all right. Disgusting. Slender-Waist Dance breathed a sigh of relief. Just now, when the dagger stabbed into the miner's left eye, the blood that spurted out gave her a fright. She was so flustered that she retrieved Dancing Wind and abandoned the dagger in his eye. In truth, although the dagger was not as good as Dancing Wind, it was still a good item. Now that she knew that the disgusting substance was not stuck to her face, Slender-Waist Dance hastily went to pick up the equipment. Gu Fei continued to fight with the miner. However, the dagger that Slender-Waist Dance stabbed into the miner's eye seemed to have turned on some sort of switch. From then on, every time she attacked, the miner would bleed profusely. Even when she broke her joints to attack, the poisonous blood would splatter out. Gu Fei knew that it was powerful. However, this type of attack was not something he could catch. Even after trying his best, some of it would still get stuck to him. Gu Fei had no choice but to slow down the pace of his attacks. After some research, he discovered that although the damage of this poisonous blood had a time limit, it could be stacked. When the number of stacks was low, Gu Fei could rely on his own HP regeneration per second to sustain it, but if the number of stacks was too high, he wouldn't be able to withstand it. There was no priest among the four of them. With this kind of continuous damage, even if they left the battle and ate food, it would be useless. The damage per second would interrupt the effect of eating food. Blood will splash. Be careful not to get splashed, Gu Fei reminded the other three. Of course. The three of them nodded. They still maintained their previous attitude of watching, and did not seem to have any intention of coming forward to help. I say, if you guys have equipment that can recover HP, you can still give it a try. Gu Fei was depressed. No. Yutian Shenming and Shi Xiaotian said. No, it's disgusting. Slender-Waist Dance said. She had all kinds of equipment, but this battle wasn't a problem of strength. It was a problem of the monster's character. It spat and splashed dog blood everywhere. It was too ungentlemanly, and Slender-Waist Dance didn't like it. Now isn't the time to care about this, Gu Fei said. Go Qianli will always support you. Yutian Shenming turned into a cheerleader. Look at this monster. Shi Xiaotian finally did something practical. He carefully observed and said, every time you cut a wound, it automatically recovers after the blood splashes. Oh, automatically recovers? Gu Fei's mind moved. With a wave of his hand, he took out another item from his pocket. It was the Holy Flame Baptism that had the ability to prevent regeneration. He slashed. Although the damage wasn't on the same level as Dark Stream Sword, it was a habit for this monster to bleed every time he was attacked. He didn't care how much damage he took. After getting slashed, the blood splashed. Gu Fei stared at the wound. However, the wound didn't change. After the blood splashed, it slowly healed itself. It's useless. Gu Fei gloomily put away Flame Baptism. Do your attacks deal any damage to this monster? The three of them started to become suspicious. It looked like each attack was a wound, but the wound didn't seem to be caused by slashes. Instead, the monster used the force of the slashes to create the wound, as if it had broken its own joints. Gu Fei and he had also fought for a few minutes. Dual flame flashed continuously. With Gu Fei's damage, even if it was a boss, it should have taken a lot of HP. However, this miner was still full of energy. His howls were full of energy. His broken bones and blood didn't stop. It definitely can't be directly defeated like this. We have to find a way to do it, Shi Xiaotian said. Right, maybe we need a few people to help. Gu Fei was quite resentful towards the three of them for only watching, but not doing anything. Yutian, go back to the mines and see if there are any clues for this quest, Shi Xiaotian said. Me? This quest is Qianli's. What's the point of me going? Yutian Shenming expressed his doubts. Maybe it's okay if we're on the same team, but Qianli is actually a reincarnated amethyst. We're very OP, aren't we? Yutian Shenming continued to add. The most important thing is how to get to the mines. Actually, you're already confused, right? Gu Fei also helped him add. We agreed. Yutian Shenming gloomily sent a message to Gu Fei. You go take a look at the mines. Gu Fei assigned more people. Who's that? Shi Xiaotian was unhappy. Whoever starts the conversation, that's who. Gu Fei said. Shi Xiaotian had no choice but to go to the cloud mines. Gu Fei continued to fight with the monster while Yutian Shenming continued to cheer him on. Slender Waist Dance continued to check her body over and over again to see if she had any of the monster's disgusting things. Although the miner's attack method didn't make sense, it was still from the system. After fighting for so long, Gu Fei had gradually seen some clues and was able to deal with it with relative ease. However, after fighting for so long, Gu Fei gradually felt that he might need some special method to kill this monster. Just relying on damage output might not be enough. Slender Waist Dance checked her equipment 180 times and finally confirmed that she didn't have any disgusting things on her. Only then did she start to focus on the battle. After watching for a while, she suddenly said, "Didn't you say to stop it? You don't have to kill it to stop it, right?" Gu Fei thought about it and thought it made sense. He nodded and said, "Then what do you think we should do? Shouldn't we first figure out what it wants to do?" "You can ask it," Slender Waist Dance said. Oh, Gu Fei was stunned. So he asked as he hacked at the monster, "What do you want to do?" "Engineering." The miner grinned and spat out 2 words. "Engineering what?" Gu Fei asked as he gave him a slash. "Mistake, mutation, revenge." The miner stuttered and spat out 3 more words. "Can't speak?" Gu Fei was puzzled. In the beginning, when he said that Gilgino was dead, the monster spoke quite smoothly. "Revenge, revenge." The miner began to repeatedly say this word as green blood sprayed out. Well, it's very simple. They do some engineering, and then there's a mistake in the engineering, such as a nuclear material leak or something. Then he gets infected and becomes like this. And then he wants revenge. That's what they say in the movies, Slender Waist Dance said. "What revenge? How?" Gu Fei asked. "Revenge, revenge." The miner continued to say. What the hell is the plot of this mission? Gu Fei was going crazy. When the guard first sent him out, it was to find people and rescue missions that didn't require any complicated plot. But when it came to the assistant part, there was suddenly a story background, which was really confusing. What kind of engineering is it? Was it mentioned before? Slender Waist Dance asked. No. Hey, wait. Is it related to the cave at the bottom of Yunjiao Lake? Gu Fei suddenly remembered. Cave? At the bottom of Yunjiao Lake, there's a cave. We found that place along the way. At first, the cave was sealed with a water barrier spell, but then we found a way to open it. This cave should be an important part of the mission, right? But when we wanted to continue, Gilgino died, and then we suddenly came to the step of looking for his assistant, Gu Fei said. In that case, his assistant also knows what's in that cave? Do you know about the cave at the bottom of Yunjiao Lake? Gu Fei asked the miner. The miner didn't answer, but his face was clearly twitching. Gu Fei's question had clearly poked at his sensitive spot. The miner suddenly roared, and his attack suddenly increased a level, becoming even faster. Fuck. Sudden attacks always caught people off guard, and this time, Gu Fei dodged very awkwardly. This time, the miner's arm wasn't broken, but suddenly extended, and this extension wasn't cute at all. The bones, flesh, tendons, and skin on his arm were completely separated, and just like that, layer by layer, the arm was stretched to a length, and the exposed flesh was dripping with thick green juice, and from time to time, it would bubble. Ugh. Slender Waist Dance couldn't take it anymore, and she quickly turned her head to the side. At this time, Yutian Shenming was finally acting like a man. When he saw that this monster was using a strange move, he reckoned that Gu Fei was going to suffer again, so he hurriedly knocked his bow and released an arrow. The arrow hit the miner's shoulder, and the miner's extended arm couldn't help but twitch, almost grabbing onto Gu Fei's arm. Without saying a word, Gu Fei suddenly teleported. He didn't escape, but instead flashed forward 2 meters, and then he swung his sword, chanting the twin flames flash. He chopped at the miner's weak point after the arm's disgusting extension. A streak of fire flew into the air. The miner's weak point was indeed the miner's weak point, and Gu Fei actually managed to cut it off. The detached part immediately turned into a pile of dead flesh, and with a plop, it fell to the ground, where it continued to rot and bubble. All that was left of the miner's right arm was a skeleton. Yutian Shenming, who was about to release the second arrow, was so shocked by this that he didn't dare move. Gu Fei was truly bold. He brandished his sword and struck the miner's bones, which were no longer wrapped in flesh and skin. The sound of his strikes was extremely ear-piercing. This fellow's bones were obviously not very tough. Under Gu Fei's weak strikes, the broken bones scattered in all directions. This is the most disgusting battle I've ever seen. Yutian Shenming put his bow away. He decided to leave this disgusting glory to Gu Fei. Slender Waist Dance had just turned her head around to calm herself down. She was mentally prepared for the long arm that was connected to the flesh, so she turned around to watch the battle. In the end, she saw the pile of dead flesh on the ground, and the broken bones that were sent flying by Gu Fei. I really can't take it anymore. Slender Waist Dance completely turned her body around. The system had already given her a warning. It was a bunch of medical jargon. In any case, if you continue like this, I'll forcefully disconnect you. Gu Fei completely crippled the monster's right arm with a series of blows. At the same time, he was on guard against the monster's left arm. If the monster tried to extend its arm, Gu Fei was prepared to use the same trick again. However, the miner did not give him the chance to do so. He continued to attack with his left arm, but Gu Fei was inspired. He carefully observed the fracture of the miner's left arm. Finally, when the left arm was broken again, Gu Fei seized the opportunity and quickly flicked the tip of his sword. The joint was indeed fragile, and this time, the miner's left arm flew out along with the flesh and bone. The miner who had lost both arms still did not back down. He waved his 2 broken arms and howled at Gu Fei. He looked quite pitiful. Gu Fei let out a long sigh. He took a few steps back and looked at the 2 people. Is this the end? What's wrong? Is he dead? Why do I still hear him screaming? Slender Waist Dance asked. Don't look back, Yutian Shenming hurriedly said. Unless you want to accept the image of being dismembered while you're still alive. Let's leave this place. Let's not do the quest anymore, Slender Waist Dance suggested. I'm asking you now. How are you going to take revenge? Hurry up and speak, or I'll knock all your teeth out. Gu Fei was still threatening. Inhumane. Yutian Shenming shook his head. Revenge? Revenge. The miner seemed to only know how to say these 2 words. Hey, I found something. At this moment, Shi Xiaotian's voice came. She was running from the direction of the mine. She had actually found something. Really? Can we end this quest now? Slender Waist Dance heard Shi Xiaotian's voice and was pleasantly surprised. What did you do? Shi Xiaotian exclaimed in shock as he ran up to the miner. Despite having lost both his arms, the miner was still struggling to attack. What did you do? Gu Fei looked behind Shi Xiaotian. Shi Xiaotian did not return alone. Behind her were countless players. I had no choice. The place is under lockdown. I was able to sneak in and pick up this thing. Then I was discovered, Shi Xiaotian said helplessly. What is this? Gu Fei asked. We're talking about this now. Shi Xiaotian was holding a metal box in her hands. Behind her, the pursuers were getting closer. What do we do with this? Gu Fei pointed at the miner. Literally speaking, you've already stopped him. Let's leave. Slender Waist Dance shouted. Fine, let's go. Gu Fei nodded. The four of them abandoned the miner and left. A large number of players arrived, and were shocked by the monster miner. What is this? Everyone discussed in whispers. What quest is Qianli's drunk doing? The various guilds were confused. When they received the news that Qianli's drunk had appeared in the cloud mine, the various guilds took it seriously and sent people over. They did not necessarily want to fight with Qianli's drunk, but they realized that Qianli's sudden appearance was not without reason. Perhaps it was a large-scale quest, so they all sent people over to see what was going on. But now they saw such a monster. He's coming over. The players screamed. The minor monster turned its head and staggered toward them. Attack, attack! No one thought that this monster was their friend. One person gave the order, and all the players supported him. All kinds of spells and attacks were thrown at it. The minor monster howled loudly. The four people who were running away heard it, and felt their hearts tighten. They looked back and saw that it was being attacked by a large number of players. Its howls became more and more shrill, but it became weaker and weaker. Finally, it completely disappeared into the wilderness. It's dead. Gu Fei sighed. Sure enough, there's strength in numbers. After being turned into that state by you, there's no point if it doesn't die, Yutian Shunming said. The players don't seem to be chasing it anymore. Gu Fei looked and said, did it drop equipment? Yutian Shunming had eagle eyes and could see that there was a small commotion among the players. Damn, could it be a key quest item? Gu Fei said. It's too late now. Yutian Shunming sighed. What did you pick up? Gu Fei asked Shi Xiaotian. I haven't had time to look, but I think it should be related. I dug it up from where we met him. Shi Xiaotian said. Oh look. The iron box was dirty and old, but it was easily opened with a gentle lift. The mouth of the box was bright and shiny. Who knew how many times it had been opened and closed to rub it to this state? A necklace. Shi Xiaotian picked up a string of things from the box. What is it? Gu Fei asked. A necklace. Shi Xiaotian said. I mean the name the system gave it. Gu Fei said. I said it was a necklace. Shi Xiaotian said. Oh. Gu Fei was depressed. The system always did this. And these? Yutian Shunming's hands were fast. He fished out the rest of the things in the box. They were many small pieces of paper. Going to the mountains after class? Yutian Shunming picked up a piece of paper and read it. Below this sentence, there was a different font, followed by a sentence. No, I have to help the teacher analyze the mineral samples from Mount Morgan's. Below it. The teacher seemed to be very interested in minerals. After that, it seems so. After that, is he trying to find a new building material? After that, I don't know. This. Could it be a small piece of paper that the two of them passed around in class? Yutian Shunming was surprised. One of them should be this monster, and the other is probably his girlfriend? Shi Xiaotian looked at the necklace. It wasn't very exquisite, but it was undoubtedly an accessory that a woman would wear. Is the teacher here referring to Gilkino? Gilkino doesn't look like an old man. Gu Fei said. I heard that you are also a teacher? Shi Xiaotian asked. Gu Fei was depressed. The teacher was an old man. This logical relationship obviously didn't make sense. There are still many pieces of paper here. Let's split them up and look at them. There should be some clues in them. Shi Xiaotian divided the pile of paper in Yutian Shunming's hands into 4 piles and gave one to each of them. There's a name mentioned here, Courtney. Yutian Shunming was the first to find it. Courtney, last night's gathering was really interesting. Pay attention to the font and figure out who is who. Shi Xiaotian reminded. Chapter 748. There's a name here too, Angus. Slim Waist Dance also found something on the paper she was in charge of. I don't think anyone would think that the monster is a woman, right? Shi Xiaotian said. Everyone shook their heads. Then it's obvious that he's Angus, Gilkino's assistant and also Gilkino's student. And the girl named Courtney mentioned here is also Gilkino's student. They should be a couple. Shi Xiaotian said. Really? I can't tell from the paper. Gu Fei said. Shi Xiaotian pulled out a piece of paper from his hand and shoved it in front of Gu Fei's eyes. On it were words like, I love you, and I love you too. Students these days are really amazing. Gu Fei said. This one, look at this one. Yutian Shenming found something again. Angus, I think this project isn't right. Can we not continue? Haha, don't worry. The teacher has already found a solution. Oh, what is it? I'll only tell you in secret. It's magic. Do you believe it? It's such a magical thing. Magic? I feel even more uneasy now. It'll be fine. Trust me. Shi Xiaotian nodded after listening. The story is getting clearer, isn't it? It's probably because of this project that Gilkino guy used some magic he shouldn't have used, or some accident happened, or maybe Angus was a victim in his plan, which led to this terrible change. Look at this. So pitiful. Slim Waist Dance held up a stack of paper and passed it to everyone. This part seems different from the previous paper, Shi Xiaotian said. But the handwriting is the same. This is no longer the same paper that was used to communicate with each other. Yutian Shenming said. It's Angus' handwriting, but it seems a little different. Gu Fei also flipped through the pages. I think he's changed at this time. He can't find Courtney anymore, so he can only write on the paper alone. To express his longing. Slim Waist Dance said. The handwriting is getting more and more chaotic. Shi Xiaotian flipped through the pages one by one. It seems that this mutation is making it harder and harder for him to maintain a normal consciousness. How pitiful. Even so, he still can't forget his Courtney. As Slender Waist Dance spoke, she looked at Gu Fei. You're the murderer. Hey, you almost threw up when you saw him. Gu Fei reminded Slim Waist Dance. That doesn't affect my sympathy for him, Slender Waist Dance said. Okay. Actually, that's not the main point. The main point should be the project mentioned here. Maybe it's the hole at the bottom of Yunjiao Lake. There must be some secret, Gu Fei said. The murderer. Slim Waist Dance was still immersed in the story. That's just a string of data, Gu Fei said. There must be something behind that cave, there's no doubt about that. These little pieces of paper can only prove this point, but there are no hints on how to unravel this secret. Maybe we should go take a look at the cave? Shi Xiaotian said. That's impossible. Gu Fei shook his head. Why? Because it's the bottom of the lake, and humans need to breathe, Gu Fei told her. Then for this quest, finding Gilkino and Angus, maybe it's to find the way to that place, Shi Xiaotian said. Maybe we shouldn't have killed him. I didn't kill him. Gu Fei spread out his hands. Those players did. Or maybe after killing him, some important clue or item will drop from his body. Then it looks like we won't get anything. Gu Fei turned his head to look into the distance. The sea of players had drowned Angus. Even if he dropped something, it would have been picked up by the players. With so many people, finding and retrieving the item would be extremely difficult. But these pieces of paper gave us another clue, Shi Xiaotian said. You mean this, Courtney? Gu Fei said. That's right. From the contents of the notes where Angus misses Courtney, we can clearly see that Courtney isn't dead. Angus only became like this because of this project, and didn't dare to see her again. The only people who know about this project are Gilkino, Angus and Courtney. Courtney might know the least, but she's our only choice at least for now, Shi Xiaotian said. Gu Fei nodded and flipped through the paper in his hand. But there's no mention of where to find her. Looking for someone again. I hate looking for people. At least she's just an NPC. It's much more convenient than looking for players, Shi Xiaotian said. Wait. Gu Fei suddenly thought of something. The empty house by Yunjiao Lake, who lives there? Who would come to live here for no reason? Of course, I'm talking about if it's not a random setting set up by the system, but if there's a story behind it. In the fireplace of the wooden house, there are some ashes after a fire. We found a piece of paper among them, marking the entrance to the cave at the bottom of Yunjiao Lake. Someone did research on this project there. Who could it be? Maybe it's Gilgino. He once led the players on the siege side to that place. Maybe it's the place where they researched the project. But it could also be Courtney. She once lived there and researched the project. What is she trying to do? From the contents of the paper, she doesn't seem to be involved in this project. She's only worried about Angus, Gufei said. Hearing you say that, it seems like we should go there and take a look, Shi Xiaotian said. That's not a good idea. That place, maybe the Han family young master has set up an ambush. He knows that our quest is related to that place, Gufei said. Courtney, where can we find this NPC? You guys go through the paper again, and see if there are any clues. I'll send a message to Sword Demon and the others in the city. Ask them to keep an eye out for an NPC with this name. Okay. They nodded and went their separate ways. But after studying the paper again, there was no more information about Courtney. Shi Xiaotian's gaze had already turned to the necklace. He looked left and right. This necklace should be Courtney's, right? Or maybe it's something that Angus wanted to give but didn't. How pitiful, Slenderwaist Dance said. Maybe this is the key to finding Courtney. Shi Xiaotian handed the necklace to Gufei. Take this item and ask your quest issuer, Shi Xiaotian said. It seems like we should go back and ask. Gufei nodded. Let's go to Yunjiao Lakeside and pay attention to whether there's an ambush, Shi Xiaotian said. What if we're discovered? Yutian Shiming knew how scary it would be if the Han family young master wanted to ambush them. Then we'll die once. It's no big deal, Shi Xiaotian said. Then we'll split up for now, Gufei said. On the siege side, the 4 guild leaders were sitting together with Yi Xiaowu. They were ready to see what this inexplicably confident little cleric had up his sleeve. Simply put, Qianli is drunk. He's currently in the middle of a quest that's highly likely to cause the siege of Cloud City to fail, Yi Xiaowu said. What? That's not fair. Why should we all fail when he can complete a quest alone? The 4 guild leaders were anxious. Both the siege and defense sides have these decisive quests, and these quests are actually two-way quests. But the problem is that there aren't any major cities with defending players, and there aren't any major cities where the defending players have the upper hand in a two-way quest. Honestly speaking, do you believe it? A two-way quest, one person against 200,000 people. One person has the upper hand, Yi Xiaowu said. He's not one person, Unsworn Sword said. I know. He's even created a guild, right? That's why you should feel even more pressure. If he wins this two-way quest. Wait, you just said that this quest is decisive in two-way. Does that mean that if we beat him in this quest and complete it, we'll also win the siege? Against the Current suddenly said. Even if we don't complete it, we won't be too far from victory. Don't you know? The siege of your neighbor Moonlit City has already ended, Yi Xiaowu said. What? They completed this type of quest. In the siege, they received help from the Wolfman army, and Moonlit City has already been conquered by them. Yi Xiaowu said. Maybe you guys should take a break and look at the forums. There are a few other major cities that are nearing the end of their battles. This experience is worth learning from. They didn't cause trouble for Qianli, right? According to what you said, we also received this type of quest. If it wasn't for Qianli playing two-way quests with us, we would have already completed it and won the siege, right? Against the Current said. That's why I appeared. Qianli shouldn't have appeared and caused so much trouble for everyone, Yi Xiaowu said. The 4 guild leaders' expressions changed when they heard this. What do you mean? Qianli's drunkenness is actually a bug? He's not human. No wonder. I felt that guy was inhumane. So it was a system error? What about those guys from Child Elite Group? They too? How is that possible? Haven't you heard of Sword Demon and Yutian Shiming? These guys clearly discovered a bug and made full use of it. Damn, what's the difference between this and using a cheat? Yi Xiaowu was dumbfounded. He was deeply impressed by the 4 guild leaders' imagination. After a while, he came back to his senses and interrupted the 4's argument. Wait, that's not what I meant. Qianli's drunkenness is a normal player. It's not a system error or anything like that. Then, What do you mean by he shouldn't have appeared? Sword of Nooth asked. It means that he's too strong. Such a strong character shouldn't have appeared in the game. His strength has completely destroyed the balance of the game, because it's hard to imagine a normal player reaching his level, Yi Xiaowu said. The game doesn't allow players to be too strong? What kind of rule is that? Wait, just who are you? The 4 guild leaders were shocked. Although Qianli's drunkenness caused them a lot of trouble and made them grit their teeth at the mention of this character, in reality, Qianli's drunkenness was the hope of every player. No player wouldn't be envious of Qianli's drunkenness, and no one wouldn't wish to have that kind of strength. But now, there was someone telling you that the game didn't allow such strength. This was equivalent to wiping out everyone's dreams and goals. Although rational people understood that they wouldn't be able to reach such heights, at least it was still a beautiful dream. Now that someone was telling you that this dream wasn't real, who wouldn't know? But it was too cruel to say it out loud. No, that's not what I meant. Yi Xiaowu hurriedly explained. What I meant was that Qianli's strength wasn't built on the game settings. Don't you know that? He's a real warrior with strong fighting skills, so he has an absolute advantage against normal players. He doesn't even need equipment or game skills to defeat many people. This kind of existence is what I'm talking about. Strength that shouldn't exist. You still haven't answered us. Who are you? The 4 asked. Are you from the game company? No. Yi Xiaowu flatly denied. I just can't stand his strength. I think it's unfair. Well, what can you do? You just said that his strength isn't built on the game settings. So unless his account is deleted, who can stop his strength? Upstream said. Even if we can't stop his strength, we can at least stop his strength from affecting other players. This is what I want to do, Yi Xiaowu said. For example, are you going to help us win the city war now? Upstream asked. No, I just want to stop him from using his strength to sabotage your mission, Yi Xiaowu insisted. Forgive me for being blunt, Upstream said. You're just a little priest with ordinary equipment who hasn't even changed classes. Where do you get the confidence to go against Qianli's drunken? If what he has is power, what I have is knowledge. Knowledge of the game, Yi Xiaowu said. You said you're not from the game company, Upstream said. Yes, I'm not, Yi Xiaowu said. Oh, I understand. Upstream wasn't stupid. You're from the game company, but in a sense, you can say that you're not. Are you playing with words? This question isn't important, Yi Xiaowu said. You have knowledge, and then use our strength to stop Qianli's drunken. Is that right? Upstream said. That's right. Okay, let's begin. Upstream was happy. He clearly showed more enthusiasm than the 3 guild leaders. The reason was simple. He already knew what the two-way mission Yi Xiaowu was talking about was, and this mission happened to be in the hands of his guild 30 miles away. Stopping Qianli's drunken would definitely give them a big breakthrough no matter what the outcome was. For singing with wine, it was quite profitable. The other 3 guild leaders also thought of the same thing as Upstream, and at this moment they didn't feel good. Getting Qianli's drunken and sabotaging his mission was something they were happy to do, but when they thought of how Upstream had picked up a big bargain after everything was done, they immediately felt unhappy. When they worked together before, they didn't think that dealing with Qianli's drunken would have such a big stake. Come on, use your knowledge, and tell us what to do. Upstream was obviously a little excited at this moment. At least I have to understand how far both sides have gone with the mission, Yi Xiaowu said. The other 3 guild leaders looked at Upstream together. Ahem. Upstream coughed and explained the situation of their mission along the way. It's really complicated, Yi Xiaowu said. See, this is the mission during the city war. The degree of freedom is quite high, and there are actually many branches that can lead to the final conclusion. Your mission list might not have a mission, but if the corresponding conditions are met, it can also be considered completed, and it can also lead to further development. Oh, is that so? The eyes of Unsworn Sword and the other 2 lit up when they heard this. Oh, is that so? The same words came out of Upstream's mouth, but the mood was different. He felt that it was a pity that he couldn't enjoy this mission alone. Gilkino is already dead. Is this his current state? Yes, he said that he needs us to find the things that were taken from the hut. What should we do? Upstream asked. If Gilkino is dead, then the contents of Qianli's drunken will also change. He will probably go find Angus. Yi Xiaowu muttered to himself. Angus? Who is Angus? The other 3 guild leaders were excited. He's Gilkino's assistant, and also one of the clue NPCs for this mission. Yi Xiaowu said. Wait, there's a situation. We found Qianli's drunken at the cloud mine. Uncheng Mutsu suddenly said. I also reported it. Teleportation. It's definitely him. Unsworn Sword also said. Is he already there? Yi Xiaowu said. Angus is there? Yes. Yi Xiaowu nodded. What will happen next? The 4 asked. That depends on how he deals with it. Maybe we should go there as well. Yi Xiaowu said. Let's hurry. The guild leaders gathered their troops. Upstream was depressed that his question had been ignored, so he took the opportunity to ask again. I say, how should we progress on my side? There are a lot of clues. Use your brain. Yi Xiaowu patted him, and the people that Unsworn Sword had gathered prepared to move out. However, they were all a group of short legs. The various guilds had already sent their speed classes to check out the situation. Angus. If Qianli's drunken mode is triggered, then that will be interesting. Maybe we can defeat him. Yi Xiaowu said. Oh, he will. Unsworn Sword nodded. He had a little understanding of Gu Fei. If there was a place to fight, this person would definitely choose to fight. Otherwise, why would everyone think that he was inhumane? In the end, when this group of short legs rushed to the halfway point, there was a report from the front. Qianli escaped after getting drunk. A strange, disgusting creature was killed by the players. Chapter 749. A strange creature was killed by a player. This information was relayed to Yi Xiaowu by Unsworn Sword. Of course, Yi Xiaowu didn't have the intelligence network that these guild leaders had. What about Qianli drunk? Yi Xiaowu asked. We didn't catch him, but the monster was killed. Unsworn Sword looked at Yi Xiaowu with bright eyes. Since the scouts were all agility type, Crisscrossing's arrow formation was very outstanding, and it played a great role in the battle to destroy the monster. Unsworn Sword hoped that this was a legendary branch plot that could lead to the final ending, and hoped that Yi Xiaowu, who claimed to have knowledge, could give him some hints. However, Yi Xiaowu was not affected by this plot at all, and continued to ask, What's the situation at the cloud mine? Over there? There's nothing. Unsworn Sword said. Let's go over there and take a look, Yi Xiaowu said. Unsworn Sword's eyes lit up again, and he moved closer to Yi Xiaowu and whispered, What's over there? Yi Xiaowu looked at him, and just as he was about to speak, Unsworn Sword noticed that Countercurrent's 3 people had also come over, and he quickly looked away as if nothing had happened. The 3 people came over to ask about the relationship between the monster and the quest, and their eyes were full of jealousy toward Unsworn Sword. It was obvious that the major guilds knew that Crisscrossing had the upper hand in killing monsters. Let's go to the cloud mine and take a look. Yi Xiaowu still had the same idea. The 4 guild leaders nodded on the surface, and in private, they sent the speed squad to the cloud mine to investigate the situation. After that, they breathed a sigh of relief and looked around, and each saw 3 mirror-like expressions. The speed squad didn't find anything, and the 4 guild leaders were all disappointed. They looked at each other, and the mirror-like expressions reappeared. The 4 were silent, and they continued to follow Yi Xiaowu to the cloud mine. This guy seemed to be very familiar with the place, and he went straight to a place as if he was going to search for something. Sword of No Oath was always so quick-witted at certain moments. With a glance, one of his subordinates immediately understood, and flew to Yi Xiaowu's side. He grinned and said, There's no need for you to come here. What are you looking for? I'll do it. Against the Current's reaction was actually not slow, but Fan Xiling, who understood his intention, lacked that kind of indomitable temperament. By the time he moved forward quickly, Sword Without Oath subordinates had already rushed to Yi Xiaowu's feet and finished their lines. Uncheng Mutsu and Black Index Finger's reactions were a little slower, and they quickly sent people after them. One of them shouted, "Let me do it," and the other shouted, "I'm good at rough work." Two figures flew out, and Fan Xiling was left behind. Yi Xiaowu stared blankly, only to see a big hole was quickly dug in front of her, big enough to bury her alive. At this time, the four presidents came over and asked Yi Xiaowu, "What are you looking for?" There should have been something, but now it seems that Qianli Yizue and the others have already taken it. Yi Xiaowu said. Unsworn Sword was furious. He turned around and looked for the player who had been doing the quest. There's an important situation here. Why haven't we discovered it yet? The players were speechless. They really did not expect to dig out a quest here. What should we do next? The four presidents asked Yi Xiaowu. We can only continue to stop them. Yi Xiaowu sighed. Gu Fei left the three people behind and returned to the main city in the clouds, heading straight for the meeting hall. When he entered the door, he saw Drifting and the other two wandering around. Why are you back? Did you break through the quest? Drifting asked. I'm still researching it. What are you doing here? Gu Fei asked. Let's see if there are any quests posted here. You know normal people can't come in, Drifting said. Yeah, why didn't I think of that? Gu Fei patted his head. Drifting laughed. Go ahead. Gu Fei hurriedly said goodbye and went straight to the guard room. He didn't know how many times he had been here, so he didn't hold back anymore. He kicked the door open and rushed to the captain. He took out the necklace and went straight to the point. Gilkino's assistant died, and this was left behind. Who is Courtney? Where is she? Dead. The captain was startled. Did she leave anything behind? Isn't it right here? Gu Fei waved the necklace in front of the captain's eyes. He was angry at the guy's attitude of ignoring him. The captain took the necklace and looked at it. He put it to the side and asked, Did she leave anything behind? This time he added the word still. The system's thinking was still somewhat logical. There were some notes. The contents of the notes said that there was a woman called Courtney who was very close to Gilkino. Maybe she could help us, Gu Fei said. Courtney? I've never heard of this name. Let me check. What is her full name? The captain said. I don't know. Gu Fei was angry. He felt that the system was deliberately testing the patience of the players. It was rare for the system to help them find someone, but it was deliberately making things difficult for them. It seemed that the parallel world was also trying its best to make finding someone an activity that was the most unpopular among the players. The captain, who was angrily scolded by Gu Fei, showed the qualities of an NPC. He didn't get angry and patiently sat in front of the table. He took a piece of paper and wrote down a few things before handing it to Gu Fei. Go to the archive room on the first floor and find Kaichin from the census. She will help you. Gu Fei approached the paper and saw that it was a note from Leader Zhang. He was so depressed that he wanted to die. But what else could he say to an NPC? He could only do as he was told. He took the note and went to the archive room on the first floor. The archive room was guarded by guards. Gu Fei showed the note before he was let in. Kaichin, Gu Fei was looking for an NPC with this name. It sounded like a beautiful girl, but when he found her, Gu Fei was taken aback. It was an old lady with a strange face and a pair of strange glasses. After seeing the note in Gu Fei's hand, she threw 5 thick and large sheepskin books to Gu Fei. Just give me Cloud Cities, Gu Fei said. Do you think I have anything that isn't from Cloud City? Auntie Caichin's words weren't polite at all. Gu Fei shivered. How could there be so many NPCs in Cloud City? He didn't understand. Could it be that the players were also counted? Trembling, Gu Fei flipped to the next page. Sure enough, the sheepskin book included the names of players. Gender, class, and level were all indicated. Gu Fei immediately thought of the Assassin's Alliance's intelligence department. However, the Assassin's Alliance still required players to gather information. Here, however, with the protection of the system, Gu Fei didn't need to put in any effort. But it seemed that if it wasn't for the captain's note, he, as a member of the guard, wouldn't be able to casually find information from here. I wonder if there's an archive room in the faction. Gu Fei flipped a few pages while his imagination ran wild. He quickly found that the names were arranged alphabetically, which made him feel very gratified. As he muttered Courtney's name, Gufei flipped to the keyword index. However, after searching for the names of several NPCs, he realized that NPCs were not like players, who came up with random code names. The real names of NPCs all had first and last names. Some of them even looked incredible, and this alphabetical arrangement was based on last names. Courtney was definitely not a last name. It was hard to imagine two lovers calling each other by last names. Gufei was going crazy. This meant that the alphabetical arrangement was of no help to him, so he could only search page by page. 5 books. Gufei's eyes were getting dimmer and dimmer. Suddenly, he thought of Drifting and the other 2 brothers. 3 more people could triple his speed. Gufei quickly messaged Drifting and asked him to come to the archive room on the 1st floor. Gufei wanted to call more people, but on second thought, other than him and the other 2 brothers, no one else could enter the hall. "What's the matter?" Drifting asked in the message. "Do me a favor," said Gufei. "Quest." "Of course." Drifting and the other 2 rushed over excitedly. Gufei was wondering if he should team up with the 3 of them and share the approval, but the 3 of them came in without any hindrance. "How can you just come in?" Gufei was surprised. "What else?" said Drifting. Gufei showed him his note, and Drifting nodded. "Oh," he said, "so the archive room is open to our camp. We didn't know. It should be a problem of camp. We are the Wanderers Association, and we travel around the world. We contributed to the establishment and perfection of the archive." "You guys contributed to the mess, right? You changed your household registration and caused so much trouble for the census ante," said Gufei. "Uft." Drifting didn't care. "What's the matter?" Gufei pointed at the 5 sheepskin books on the table. "I'm looking for someone named Courtney." "Oh my God." Drifting was a frequent visitor to the archive room, so he knew how scary it was to search for information on NPCs in the census office. "What's worse is that Courtney is a first name, not a last name," said Gufei. Drifting sneered. "That's a lucky thing. If it's a last name, it'll be a tragedy. Think about what would happen if you found a player with the last name Lee." Gufei thought about it. That was true. Last names were more likely to be repeated than first names, and there were benefits to knowing first names. He felt a little comforted. He waved his hand and asked the 3 to get to work. Since the 3 of them were here, they didn't waste any time. They each picked up a book and started to search. Drifting looked carefully and took out a pen to write on the book. He asked Gufei, "Is it Courtney or Courtney?" "Courtney." Gufei pointed and asked, "Can I write on the book?" "The system will fix it." He was indeed experienced in drifting, but Gufei could see the painful expression on his face. He believed that he must have learned a painful lesson. For example, when he was looking up information, he took out a pen to make some notes or something, preparing to use it later, but it was fixed by the system. The 4 of them talked and started to search together. It wasn't too slow. After all, a player's ID was very different from a normal name. It was easy to scan. The NPC's name was also very eye-catching. If a new person is born, the information will be updated at any time, right? Will it mess up the pages? Gufei asked. "Look, all the players with information are above level 10, so they won't be recorded when they are born," Drifting said. "It's the same if they are recorded at level 10. They can reach level 10 in the blink of an eye," said Gufei. "The problem is that you are looking for an NPC, not a player. Do you think it will affect the information?" Drifting said. "Will players also have such a name?" Gufei asked. Drifting moved his book over, pointed to a name, and asked Gufei, "Do you think a player will name himself Ryan Francis Bryant?" Gufei looked at the long list of names and said, "It's hard to say." At $% and Drifting left without a word and focused on looking for Courtney. He didn't talk to Gufei anymore. Only the sound of books flipping could be heard in the archive room. Finally, there was movement from left hand. "I found one." "Oh." Gufei hurried over. The name was Courtney Green, but the information showed that Courtney was only 13 years old. She was a flower seller in the central square. "So that little girl has a name." Drifting nodded. He had seen a little girl selling flowers in the central square. "That's not what I'm looking for," said Gu Fei. "Then, she's a civil engineering student," Gu Fei said. "At least she's old enough to fall in love." Drifting looked at the information of the flower seller. Student in love. Which part doesn't match? Maybe she's selling flowers for a part-time job. 13 years old. Gu Fei emphasized. "She's at the age of first love," Drifting sighed. Gu Fei spat out a mouthful of blood. "Let's write down this page number and keep looking." The three of them had no choice but to continue searching. There was more than one person named Courtney. In the end, there were a total of 4 people, and Courtney, who was clearly marked as a student of the civil engineer Gilkino, was the last to be discovered. Her full name was Courtney Zola, and the Z part was at the end. "Okay, this is it." Gu Fei took the information and read it carefully. Courtney Zola, 28 years old, one of the students of the civil engineering master Gilgino. When she was a student, her lover died in a major project in Cloud City. She was sad and ended her civil engineering career. She became a forest caretaker near Yunjiao Lake. "This is it. A female forest caretaker?" Drifting asked. "That's her. Yunjiao Lake? I don't think I've seen it before." Gu Fei was confused. "Oh, you go there often?" Although Drifting was not from Cloud City, he had lived in Cloud City and knew what Yunjiao Lake was like. "I'm going to continue with my mission. You guys continue with your work." "Thank you." Gu Fei was about to leave when he suddenly remembered something. He quickly turned back and almost bumped into the 3 people behind him. "What's wrong?" the 3 asked. "What project is mentioned here? Can we find it in the archives?" Gu Fei said. "Should be able to." Drifting nodded. He was familiar with the layout of the archives, so he led Gu Fei to the section that specialized in construction projects. Gu Fei asked the NPC to check it, but he was rejected. "Let me do it." Drifting walked forward and said the same thing as Gu Fei. The NPC gave him the information without hesitation. Gu Fei moved forward to read it, but the NPC ignored him. System. Damn, this Gilgino has guided a lot of projects. Which one is it?" Drifting was depressed. "Yunjiao Lake," Gu Fei said. "Then it's this one." Drifting pointed. "Yunjiao Lake Bottom Water Storage and Drainage Project." Gu Fei quickly browsed through the content, but he didn't find anything special. The description of the project was just a general explanation and boast. It praised that this project perfectly solved the problem of drinking water and sewage discharge in Cloud City. It was a project that had the highest public support and satisfaction in Cloud City. In the process of boasting, there was no mention of any casualties in this project. "Is there anything else?" Gu Fei asked. Drifting continued to browse. The number of projects wasn't as large as the number of people, so he quickly finished. He shook his head and said, "There's nothing else about Yunjiao Lake." "Then it seems like it's this one," Gu Fei said. "Probably." Gu Fei nodded. This search gave him an idea. He wanted to go to the census department to find information about Gilgino and Angus. But he knew that if he mentioned this again, Drifting and the other 2 would fight him to the death. Thinking that the 2 dead people might not have any clues, Gu Fei decided not to waste time here. He quickly left. As he left the city, he quickly contacted the other 3 and told them about the information he found. The project mentioned in the quest is undoubtedly the Yunjiao Lake Bottom Water Storage and Drainage Project, but there's no information about any casualties. But in Courtney's information, it clearly states that her lover died in a certain project. This person should be Angus, but in fact Angus isn't dead, right? Gu Fei analyzed. "We have to find Courtney. The information says that she's a forest watcher near Yunjiao Lake, but I don't think I've seen her," Gu Fei said. "A forest watcher? Maybe she's an active NPC. You don't go to Yunjiao Lake often, do you?" "It's not strange that you haven't seen her," Shi Xiaotian said. Who goes there often?" Gu Fei thought about it, and asked in the guild chat if anyone was familiar with Yunjiao Lake. No one said anything. Yunjiao Lake was a place that only people who were in love would be familiar with. This was a private matter, and no one wanted to admit it. "What do you want?" July asked Gu Fei in private. "There's an NPC over there, and I want to confirm if anyone knows," Gu Fei said. Is there a girl in love in the guild? I'll ask for you, July said. It was obvious that there were girls like that in the guild, but Gu Fei didn't want to be exposed. Gu Fei just wanted to know the result, so he didn't care. He just urged July to hurry. The four of them had already taken a detour to Yunjiao Lake. I asked. There's a forest watcher in the forest near Yunjiao Lake. Sometimes she walks by the lake. It's a female NPC. Is it the one you're looking for? July asked. That's her. Thank you so much. Gu Fei was filled with emotion. The power of the masses was endless. The information has confirmed that there's a female forest watcher by Yunjiao Lake. I believe it's Courtney. We'll go meet her now, but we have to be discreet. We have reason to believe that the area around Yunjiao Lake is filled with traps, Gu Fei said. Let's not take the main road to Yunjiao Lake. Let's go around the mountain path and observe from above, Shi Xiaotian said. I should have borrowed Mang Mang's binoculars earlier. Why didn't I think of that? Gu Fei was depressed. Chapter 750. All roads lead to Rome. Yunjiao Lakeside was just an open-air location, so there were naturally countless options to get to this place. The biggest advantage of the path opened up by the system wasn't that it was close, but that it allowed players to focus on their journey and wouldn't be harassed by monsters along the way. If players wanted to take a shortcut, they would inevitably be harassed by monsters along the way. They might even bump into a high-leveled area. Not only would they not be able to get through, but they might even lose their lives if they tried to force their way through. These problems weren't a problem for these four people. First, they were fast, and second, Gu Fei and Yutian Shenming were fast at clearing monsters. If they could avoid the monsters, they would. If they couldn't avoid them, they would kill them in 2 or 3 hits. It didn't take long before they reached the back of the mountain range beside Yunjiao Lakeside. Let's go up from here. Shi Xiaotian raised his head and said. The other 3 nodded. This place seemed to be Yunjiao Lakeside's territory. There weren't many monsters, and the atmosphere was ambiguous. Yutian Shenming was clearly excited. Yunjiao Lakeside was also very large. When the 4 reached the top of the mountain, they could only see the rippling lake and the reeds. It was a bit far. The small wooden hut is over there. Gu Fei pointed. This target was relatively close. Haha, isn't that the place where you were killed by the honor kill? Slender Waist Dance laughed. Look what a big lake. Gu Fei said. The 3 looked at him strangely, not knowing why he was suddenly sighing. Someone swam like this before. Gu Fei gestured. You're looking to die. Slender Waist Dance clenched her teeth. Shi Xiaotian laughed and looked around. I don't see any NPCs here. But there's already a forest here. If there are people in the forest, they should be protecting the forest, right? Looking for people in the forest is troublesome. Yutian Shenming said. Yeah, follow closely. Don't get lost. Gu Fei said. Yutian Shenming was in tears, but he knew that Gu Fei was not mocking him this time. It was a genuine and kind reminder, so he could not reprimand Gu Fei for not keeping his promise. I think it would be more efficient if we split up, Shi Xiaotian suggested. Or we can shout out her name. Maybe she'll come looking for us, Yutian Shenming said. Let's do it this way. The 3 of us will split up and look for her. Yutian, you stay here and call her name. Gu Fei nodded. Yutian Shenming felt that he was asking for trouble. So the 3 of them split up, and Yutian Shenming's affectionate call to Courtney echoed on the hillside. In the end, Courtney did not appear, and many players were woken up. Many figures came out from the haystacks and bushes. They all tried to look in this direction, wanting to see which idiot had lost his wife. Gu Fei and the other 2 each picked a direction and split up. Be careful of ambushes. This was Gu Fei's warning to everyone. Luckily, NPCs were stylish. They would not bend down to hide in the reeds, so the target should still be very obvious. Not long after the 3 of them split up, Shi Xiaotian sent a message to the 3 of them, saying that he had found the target by the lake. Gu Fei and Slim Waist Dance quickly arrived. Yutian Shenming sent a message to Gu Fei. Have you come to pick me up? Gu Fei sighed and could only run over to fetch this guy. Shi Xiaotian and Slim Waist Dance did not act rashly. They still stood on the hillside and followed Courtney from afar. When Gu Fei and Yutian Shiming rushed back, Shi Xiaotian pointed and said, "Looks like you were right. There is indeed an ambush." Gu Fei took a look and couldn't help but laugh. The reeds were very high, but Courtney still showed half of her body when she walked normally. However, the movement of her footsteps seemed to be a little too strong. The reeds within a radius of tens of meters would tremble along with her. The figure inside was basically faintly discernible. This ambush was a little too stupid. Of course, Gu Fei didn't know the complexity of this. With Yi Xiaowu, the 4 major guilds rushed here from the cloud mine. With their manpower, it was naturally faster to find Courtney. The 4 major guild leaders all sent their trusted aides to communicate with Courtney and try to dig up quests, but they found nothing. Yi Xiaowu also didn't give the 4 a clear hint, which made the 4 of them a little unhappy. Making such a stupid ambush was naturally a competition between the 4 of them. They all wanted to get the quest, so they personally led their subordinates to circle around Courtney. No one was willing to back down. Every time it came to a critical moment, the cooperation of these guys was always a joke. There's a problem. Even if the Han family young master knew we were coming here to do quests, how did he know we were looking for this NPC? Normal players wouldn't know this NPC by the cloud suburb lake, right? Is the Han family young master someone who often comes here to play? Shi Xiaotian said. I don't think so. Gu Fei said. The Han family young master was an evil guy that people couldn't stand. Love. It was a waste of such a beautiful word to put on that guy. Just thinking about it made him feel like he was committing a crime. And I don't think it's him. I don't think that guy would make such a funny ambush. Look, his butt is exposed and he's still crawling. Gu Fei said. No matter who it is, how did they know we were looking for Courtney? Shi Xiaotian said. There are so many players, so there must be someone who knows there's an NPC here. It's a quest, so wouldn't we have to interact with NPCs, so we came to try? Gu Fei said. How could they be so stupid? Shi Xiaotian said. Also, you said that their setup was very exposed. If it was an ambush, then it was exposed. But maybe their goal was to protect us and prevent us from interacting with Courtney. Maybe the ambush was just a convenience? Shi Xiaotian continued to analyze. What you said makes sense. Gu Fei nodded and looked back at the other 2. What do you guys think? There should be a lot of men and women in the bushes. Why didn't any of them come out when they stepped over here? Yutian Shiming also knew how to think. This. Gu Fei was startled and immediately reacted. The bushes were filled with their people? Looks like it. Shi Xiaotian nodded. They came 1 step earlier, and had already set up the trap. The ones that didn't move in the reeds were the real ambush. These guys following them, maybe they were just a cover? Even Shi Xiaotian couldn't guess that these guys following them were ready to rush over and snatch the quest at any time. They set it up beforehand? Do they know Courtney's movement route? Slender Waist Dance said. Maybe there are players who are familiar with this NPC? Shi Xiaotian said. Wait, it can't be that guy, right? Gu Fei suddenly thought of someone. He pulled up his friend list and saw that he was indeed online. He sent a message over. You're here to cause trouble again? Qianli Drunk is here. Yi Xiaowu, who received the message, ignored Gu Fei and quickly revealed the information to the 4 guild leaders. How did you know? The 4 were shocked. They had all left spies along the way, but none of them had received any information about Qianli Drunk. How did this guy know first? He sent me a message. He guessed that I was here, Yi Xiaowu said. You guys. What's your relationship? The 4 were confused. Yi Xiaowu didn't answer the question. Instead he asked, You all have spies, right? The 4 nodded and explained the situation of their spies. Looks like they didn't take the main road. They took a detour, Yi Xiaowu said. The 4 guild leaders nodded. This was something that couldn't be prevented. The map was so big. If they wanted to take a detour, they would be everywhere. The 4 guilds couldn't watch the entire Yunjiao lakeside. He noticed me. It looks like he's already noticed the situation with the NPC. That means he's nearby. Yi Xiaowu said and looked around. The 4 guild leaders were full of confidence. We've already set up an ambush in the reeds. The NPC is also surrounded by our guild's most elite members. No matter how strong Qianli Drunk is, I don't think he can fight us head-on. He has to come into contact with this NPC, right? The four asked Yi Xiaowu. Although it's not absolute, there's at least an 80% chance that he took this route. Now that he's here, there's no doubt about it. Yi Xiaowu said. Then we'll wait for him to walk into the trap. The four were happy. They could kill Qianli Drunk again. Unless he what? The four became nervous when they heard that there was a twist. Qianli Drunk. Suddenly someone shouted in the reeds. They'd obviously found their target. Where? The four guild leaders said in unison. The northwest slope. It was inconvenient for them to observe the outside if they hid in the reeds. Now that they'd received a clear report, they poked their heads out slightly. As expected, the familiar and terrifying black figure was running down from the northwest slope. The four guild leaders were full of confidence before, but now they felt nervous for no reason. They each ordered, "Get ready." Everyone held onto their weapons and hid themselves, waiting for Gu Fei to enter their encirclement before launching an ambush. Unexpectedly, Gu Fei didn't run over. He stopped when he was 100 meters away and shouted, "Courtney, Angus isn't dead." These words were clearly heard by everyone in the reeds. The players were confused. They didn't know what Qianli was up to. Yi Xiaowu said gloomily, "He really did this. What's going to happen?" The four guild leaders were shocked. The answer was out. Courtney, who had been closely grouped with them, suddenly froze when she heard the shout. She quickly turned her head to look at Gu Fei. Gu Fei consolidated his results and shouted again. Courtney didn't say anything and quickly ran toward Gu Fei. Fuck. The four guild leaders finally knew what Gu Fei was up to. This NPC didn't need the players to come and serve her. She could be summoned by shouting. This defied common sense in online games. Normally, in online games, the players would pretend to be the grandsons of the NPCs and carefully serve them in exchange for rewards. However, this NPC was too useless. She looked like she was in a hurry to complete some kind of quest. Stop her. The four guild leaders had an idea and decided to surround this NPC. No. Yi Xiaowu quickly stopped them. But the players obviously listened to their guild leaders. Who cared about Yi Xiaowu? They all went forward to block the way. What's wrong? The four guild leaders hurriedly asked Yi Xiaowu. Stopping her is making her an enemy. What do you think will happen? Yi Xiaowu said. 2 streaks of white light. The seemingly unremarkable female forest watchers attacked without the slightest hesitation. The players wanted to surround the NPC and not let her leave. In the end, she came over and stabbed 2 of them to death. Then she didn't make things difficult for the others. She just continued to run. Her speed was actually quite fast. Is it a thief? NPCs that could fight usually had a profession. The players saw that this NPC used a dagger and moved so quickly, so they quickly came to this conclusion. Godly thief, sharpshooter, lurker, 3 professions, Yi Xiaowu said. This was where NPCs were shameless. They didn't have the same profession as players and often had multiple professions. If we kill her, will the drunk Qianli quest not be completed? The 4 guild leaders asked. Yi Xiaowu froze and then nodded. Indeed, it won't be completed on this line. Say so earlier. The 4 guild leaders grumbled at Yi Xiaowu and immediately ordered the players to prepare to kill Courtney. Yi Xiaowu hesitated, but finally opened his mouth. If you kill her, your quest will also be stuck here. Stop. The 4 guild leaders roared, and then turned to glare at Yi Xiaowu. What's going on? Both of you are in the same quest system, Yi Xiaowu said. But didn't you say there would be multiple routes? Can't we just take another route? The 4 said. That's right, but I have to remind you that my goal is to stop the destruction and influence of Qianli's drunk. It's not to help you guys with the quest, Yi Xiaowu said. You said that a long time ago. Uncheng Mutsu said. Are you saying that you won't give us any hints about the other routes? That's right, Jiangchen said. Are you saying that you won't give us any hints about the other routes? That's right. Yi Xiaowu nodded. The four guild leaders glanced at each other. In the guild channel, their subordinates anxiously urged, "Do we do it? Do we do it? We're about to run out. We're about to run out. Do it." Unsworn Sword blurted out. Unchung Mutsu and Black Index Finger also nodded resolutely. This cleric claimed that he wouldn't help on other routes, but on this route, when did he give any hints? The four guilds had been busy for so long, but they still couldn't figure out what this quest was about. What information, what background, what did Qianli mean when he was drunk? Why did this NPC run when he heard it? The four guild leaders realized that whether it was this route in front of them, or the other routes that they hadn't discovered yet, it was all the same to them. If they left this NPC behind, they wouldn't know how to complete the quest. Instead, they would let Qianli have a chance to complete his quest. It wasn't worth it. Rather than that, they might as well give up this opportunity. What was even better was that Against the Current guy's quest was also interrupted. Perhaps this last point was the reason why Unsworn Sword and the others were so determined. Against the Current didn't even have time to say anything. The three of them had already organized their own guilds to attack Courtney. Fuck you three. Against the Current's thoughts were more meticulous. At the beginning, he had already considered the gains and losses of the quest, but the other three's determination surprised him. Then he saw that the three of them didn't even pay attention to him, and rushed forward to attack. It took him a moment to realize that he was different from the three of them. His quest was still on this route, so he wasn't completely clueless. He still had a chance to complete this quest. Guild leader Against the Current, think of the big picture. Unsworn Sword said sincerely. We know that your guild seems to be involved in this quest, but look, right now, Qianli is closer to the end after getting drunk. We have to do this, Unchung Mutsu said. The sacrifice of singing and drinking will be remembered by all the players in Cloud City. Black Index Finger was acting like a representative here. The three of them echoed each other. Against the Current was furious, but what could he do? Even if he could save her, he had no clue. During this period of time, the kid who was assigned a mission 30 miles away had been running around like a dog. He would go around and talk to people whenever there was something. Previously, when he found out that Courtney was an important person, he went against the flow and sent someone 30 miles away to try and probe her 800 times, but to no avail. It seemed like there was no difference whether he had a quest or not. He didn't know how to continue. Against the Current thought. He made up his mind and didn't say anything else. What was the point of saying anything? Turning hostile? One of them couldn't beat three guilds. With the guild leader's order to kill, the players didn't stop Courtney. The thick-skinned warriors stacked together and started to provoke Courtney. Yi Xiaowu couldn't help but say, "It's useless. She won't generate aggro right now. She'll just get drunk on Qianli." Fuck, what kind of monster is this? The four guild leaders cursed. Surround her with people, Yi Xiaowu reminded. We've done that a long time ago, the four guild leaders said. In terms of commanding, none of them were weak. But it wasn't that easy. How could they just focus on killing the NPCs? Gu Fei discovered that this group of people wanted to fight to the death, and had already rushed over to provide support. He teleported into the encirclement and actually cooperated with Courtney's attack, slashing out an opening with his sword. What did you just say? In the end, Courtney stopped running. She pulled Gu Fei over and started saying her lines. Gu Fei didn't answer. He took out the necklace and showed it to Courtney. Courtney held it, tears welling up in her eyes. She muttered to herself, "Angus, it really is Angus." "Where is he?" Courtney quickly asked Gu Fei. Suddenly, there was a mess of screams around him. Gu Fei looked around in surprise. The surrounding players were all crazy for some reason. They suddenly attacked and screamed at the same time. It was so noisy that he couldn't hear anything. Is this going to work? The four guild leaders asked Yi Xiaowu. They hoped that the sound waves would disrupt Gu Fei and Courtney, so that they wouldn't be able to communicate. Yi Xiaowu didn't know whether to laugh or cry. It's useless against NPCs, but it might work against players. This player's weird tricks were beyond his imagination. Stop wasting time. If we don't escape, how are we going to see Angus? Gu Fei roared. The NPC was indeed unaffected by the noise. He nodded firmly. I must see Angus. It's over. Yi Xiaowu shook his head. What's over? The 4 guild leaders didn't understand. Courtney took out the longbow on her back and knocked 10 long arrows at once. She raised her hand and released. The arrows flew out in a fan shape, instantly killing 10 people. Fuck, she's stronger than me. Gu Fei was shocked. The boss is going berserk, Yi Xiaowu said to the 4 guild leaders. Chapter 751. Why would he go berserk for no reason? The 4th guild master was furious. Bosses usually went berserk when they were on the brink of death. Who would go berserk with full health? Then why would he go berserk again before he died? Was there any justice in this world? The plot has been triggered. The item is in his hands, Yi Xiaowu said. Then what do we do now? The 4th guild master was in tears. Just as he spoke to Yi Xiaowu, Courtney shot another scattered arrow. Those who were hit died instantly. There was no additional damage. It was a pure physical attack, and Courtney's attack power was extremely strong. It's a pure physical attack. Only heavy warriors or constitution warriors can tank it, Yi Xiaowu said. In fact, most priests also played with high constitution, but they wore cloth clothes and had very low defense. In the parallel world, equipment didn't have class or level requirements, but there were attribute requirements. High-level armor required constitution and strength. Priests usually had constitution but not strength. For equipment, they could invest in strength, but the benefit was only defense. The strength attribute itself didn't help the priest's abilities at all. So how to choose was a topic that the players had been studying. Of course, this wasn't the time to study this. Warriors always had the habit of protecting their team. Now that they were instantly killed by Courtney's scattered arrows, many warriors had already stood up and prepared to take the beating. However, Yi Xiaowu's reminder was not for nothing. There were many types of warriors because of the different attributes they had added. Although the defense of the heavy armor was not low, the berserker warriors who focused on attacking and increasing their strength could not serve as a shield at this time. They were completely within Courtney's range of instant kills, and they would die an ugly death. The 4 guild masters hurriedly gave the order. The heavy warriors and constitution warriors all came forward to act as shields. Courtney didn't care who stood up. She just kept shooting arrows, charging forward as she did. The heavy warriors and constitution warriors could tank one of her arrows, but before they could cheer, Gu Fei teleported over and followed up with a double flame flash. They died so easily. Then he rolled on the ground and focused on attacking people's lower body, avoiding another wave of Courtney's attacks. The players complained. These 2 characters, no matter which one appeared alone, even if it was troublesome, the players could always deal with it. But now that both of them attacked together, the damage was so high that they couldn't handle it. The most disgusting thing was Courtney's special aggro. She didn't care about the other players trying to seduce her. She just wanted to run with Gu Fei, which made the other players gnash their teeth. What should we do? What should we do? The 4 guild leaders relied on Yi Xiaowu. Yi Xiaowu opened his mouth but couldn't say anything. He had a way to deal with any boss or NPC, but if he wanted to deal with Gu Fei, he was still far from Qianli. How could he know what Gu Fei would do next? This was a real human being, not a robot he had designed. Gu Fei was now using the Earth Hall Saber technique, rolling around on the ground. The reeds were so high that they couldn't even see Gu Fei's shadow. Where is he? Yi Xiaowu watched as Gu Fei squatted down and disappeared. How would we know? The 4 guild leaders were furious. They were all waiting for this fellow to come up with an idea. Yet he was actually a good-for-nothing at the crucial moment. Have the tank cover. My mages are coming. Against the current really didn't want this NPC to die, but looking at the situation he had to grit his teeth and contribute. Guild leader against the current is really righteous. You are a role model for our generation. The 3 guild leaders were still so hypocritical. Against the current couldn't be bothered with them anymore. The warriors in the circle began to retreat instead of surrounding and attacking. They made room for a retreat. But the warriors' movement speed couldn't compare to Courtney's. She broke out of the encirclement at high speed and caught up with the warrior in one step. As soon as she got close, she pulled out her dagger. The blade flashed, and the warrior fell no slower than an arrow. It was impossible to surround the NPC in the center and bombard them with mages. Against the Current didn't care about this at all. With an order, the mages who had already arrived all cast their spells, covering the group of warriors around Courtney. Damn. Unsworn Sword gritted his teeth. Against the Current must have done this on purpose. Seeing that the warriors over there belonged to them, he didn't think at all, and just bombarded them together. What is this? Yi Xiaowu saw the opponent's strategy and was shocked. This is a necessary sacrifice, Against the Current said calmly. Are you guys confused? This is a boss-level NPC. Do you know how much HP she has? How many people did you sacrifice with your AoE spells? Do you think you can exchange for her HP? Yi Xiaowu said. Against the Current was also stunned. Just now, the AoE bombardment killed a bunch of players, but Courtney was still standing. Against the Current suddenly panicked. Right. They didn't know how much HP this target had. Would it really be effective to bombard their own people like this? Against the Current stuttered, vaguely feeling that he had made a mistake somewhere. Unsworn Sword had sacrificed a group of warriors. Hearing Yi Xiaowu's reminder, he reacted and cried. What the hell? This isn't Qianli's drunk. This is a boss. Gosh. Only then did Upstream realized what the problem was. Fighting with Qianli's drunk had made them develop the habit of killing their own people along with their enemies. Qianli's drunk was a player. When faced with such a large AoE attack, he couldn't avoid it and would naturally die. However, this was a boss. Could a boss's HP be on the same level as a player's? If they wanted to kill a boss with a single volley of attacks, they were thinking too lowly of a boss. Against the Current thought of his own mistake and began to sweat. This wave of bombardment was so satisfying. It directly blasted a hole in the group of warriors. Courtney rushed out and continued to fire at random. Maybe she killed Qianli's drunk just now. Against the Current was still comforting himself. Of course, Qianli's drunk isn't dead. Yi Xiaowu said. How do you know? Even if Qianli's drunk is her current aggro target, if Qianli's drunk dies, her actions will lose direction. Yi Xiaowu said. If that's the case, then we just need to kill Qianli's drunk? Unsworn Sword was pleasantly surprised. Why do you sound like you're surprised? Unchung Mutsu said. Didn't we realize that Qianli's drunk isn't easy to deal with, so we decided to kill the NPC to stop his quest. It was Qianli's drunk that refused to fall into our ambush and was shouting outside, so we had no choice but to do this. Now that he's trapped, we should make him our main target. Unsworn Sword's thoughts were clear. Wait, you're saying that the NPC is following in Qianli's drunk footsteps? Against the Current suddenly said. Of course, she'll make some smart decisions based on the attacks around her and counterattack, but the general direction she's moving in won't change. Yi Xiaowu said. Then don't you guys think that she's moving in our direction? Against the Current was shocked. Fuck. Unsworn Sword cried out in shock, only to see a blur in front of him. A black figure had suddenly appeared. Gu Fei. Qianli's drunk. No one would have thought that at this time. He wasn't in a hurry to rush out of the encirclement to continue his quest. Instead, he took advantage of the players being tossed around by Courtney to sneak into the 4 guildmasters' headquarters. Teleporting, when Gu Fei suddenly appeared in front of them, it was already too late for them to run. Dual Flame Flash. Gu Fei twisted his body and attacked. No one could dodge it. However, the guild leader level experts all had their own moves, and they were all able to withstand Gu Fei's attack. The pitiful one was Yi Xiaowu. Gu Fei turned around and used Dual Flame Flash once before he died. Gu Fei was very regretful. He didn't even get to say hello. The 4 guild leaders had no intention of exchanging blows with Gu Fei at all. The only reason they had suffered this blow was because Gu Fei had suddenly used instant movement to appear right in front of them. The 4 guild leaders hated the fact that they were standing so close to the others. At this moment, after receiving Gu Fei's attack, they split up and ran in 4 different directions, praying that Gu Fei would go after any of the other 3 guild leaders but not them. The 4 guild masters also happened to have 4 short legs. They all knew that if Gu Fei caught up to them, it would be a matter of time before he could finish. They ran madly for support while looking back to see who would be the unlucky one. Against the Current once again showed that he was the most meticulous. He realized that Gu Fei's sudden attack was not for no reason to show off. This was a quest, an honor kill quest. However, Gu Fei's quest should be Unsworn Sword. Against the Current, after thinking about this, he calmed down a bit. The other 3 turned back to see who would be the unlucky one. He turned back to see how Unsworn Sword would be killed. Thus, he saw Qianli drunk, the tip of the sword less than a centimeter away from him. Why me? Against the Current blurted out. Why not you? Gu Fei felt strange. Isn't your quest Unsworn Sword? Against the Current said. It hasn't been for a long time. Gu Fei said gloomily. When I went online today, I didn't know who ambushed me, but I failed the quest, so I had no choice but to switch to you. Against the Current was in tears. Ambushing Gu Fei when he went offline, he was the one who did this. This is an honor kill. Thinking of this, Against the Current's legs turned to jelly. But he did not give up. He tried his best to hold on. He had ice shield, he had mana support. He was swept to the ground by Gu Fei's kick. Dual flame flash, lightning palm, lightning art, fireball art, chain fireball. Gu Fei used all the skills he could use. Against the Current was quite tanky. Ice shield was a shield with HP, but under Gu Fei's powerful attacks, it was shattered in an instant. Mana support was a skill that used up mana to cover the damage to HP after being attacked. Mages had more mana than HP, so this skill was very practical. But Against the Current couldn't hold on any longer. He couldn't get help. The damned reeds around him made him disappear from everyone's sight. Even if the priests arrived, they wouldn't be able to use their skills if they couldn't see him. Against the Current's mana wasn't limitless. Moreover, when mana support was in effect, the body's defense coefficient didn't play any role. It was taking 100% of the damage. The only gain from Against the Current was that he completely experienced how strong Gu Fei's attack power was. The white light rose in the end, and Against the Current was killed by an honor kill. The news was announced by the system in the city defense, and there was jubilation. Sword Demon and the others all sent congratulatory messages, and asked in surprise how they had killed Against the Current in the middle of the quest. Even Yutian Shunming and the other 2, who were preparing to provide support in the distance, didn't understand. This song didn't seem to be in Gu Fei's plan. Against the Current's support bought time for the other 3 guild leaders. Unchungmutsu was only 2 more hits away from being completely killed. He rolled and crawled as he ran in the reeds. Unsworn Sword and Black Index Finger weren't much better off. They hid in a panic while praying that Against the Current would die a little slower. The 3 of them had escaped misfortune in the end. If there was a chance, Gu Fei wouldn't mind killing them. Reinforcements were quickly coming over, but Courtney was also quickly arriving. Everywhere she went, there were white lights. She was actually much more impressive than Gu Fei. Gu Fei crouched down and hid in the reeds again, moving when the players couldn't see him. His movement speed didn't seem to slow down because of the change in his posture. This was thanks to Kung Fu. How to roll and move at high speed was a basic lesson in Earth Hall Kung Fu. Gu Fei took this opportunity to show off his skills. Yi Xiaowu was already dead. One of the 4 guild leaders was dead, and the other 3 had narrowly escaped death. They were still in a state of confusion. The players were in a mess, not knowing what to do. Gu Fei appeared and disappeared in the reeds. Every now and then, he would flash to the feet of a player and reap his life. Courtney was an NPC. She didn't need to see Gu Fei to know exactly where Gu Fei was. She followed Gu Fei's movements and rushed out, sweeping everything in her way. When Gu Fei rolled all the way out of the reeds, the players realized that he had already broken through. The players couldn't stop the berserk Courtney at all, and she successfully stepped out of the reeds. Gu Fei sprinted, and Courtney followed behind him effortlessly. She had 3 agility classes, so who knew how fast her movement speed would be, not to mention that she was in a berserk state. They're coming. Yutian Shunming and the other 2 were lying in ambush in the woods on the hillside, and finally saw Gu Fei leading Courtney out of the encirclement. Looks like they don't need help anymore, Shi Xiaotian said as he watched. The classes without agility couldn't catch up to the two of them, and those with agility came out to cause trouble. Courtney turned around and scattered. She had agility, but no life. Flowers bloomed, and the reeds were magnificent. This NPC is so strong. If I keep carrying her like this, can she be a pet? Yu Tianshiming fantasized. Gu Fei had already run close and called out to the three of them. Retreat. The three of them jumped out of the woods and joined the running team. The people from the 4 major guilds didn't dare to chase after them. Very quickly, Courtney thought that she was out of battle, and immediately stopped moving. She began to exchange lines with Gu Fei again. Where's Angus? Courtney, who had just killed so many people, seemed to still have tears in her eyes. Give me the things. Gu Fei gathered the small pieces of paper from the three of them, and handed them to Courtney. Ah! Courtney exclaimed. Of course she recognized what these were. Very quickly, she flipped through the notes that the two of them had exchanged back then, and she saw Angus's yearning and confession to himself. Angus, why didn't you come to see me? Courtney was, of course, curious. Because something terrible happened to him, Gu Fei said. Yes, he was dismembered by you. Yu Tianshiming complained. Gu Fei sent 2 kicks flying. Courtney didn't care at all and just asked, what happened to him? There seemed to be an accident during the water storage project at the bottom of Yunjiao Lake. Angus, his body was obviously modified. He's no longer a normal human, and he's in pain, Gu Fei said. You're so into it, Shi Xiaotian complained. Gu Fei glared at her. Then where is he now? Courtney asked. Finally, the truth was coming. Gu Fei took a deep breath. He is already dead. Courtney froze and suddenly fell to the ground. Damn, what happened? She died? Was this a vital attack? Gu Fei was anxious and quickly squatted down to check the situation. Does she have any exquisite equipment on her? Can she take it off? Yu Tianshiming was also very anxious. Gu Fei stared at him. She should have some rogue equipment, right? I saw her use a dagger at close range, Slender Waist Dance said. You two be quiet. Gu Fei was angry. He tested Courtney's breath like a human, and found that she wasn't dead. What do we do now? Do we go find a doctor for her? Gu Fei said. Maybe we can wait for her to wake up on her own, Shi Xiaotian said. We can't wait here, right? Those guys might come back again. Gu Fei said as he forcibly dragged Courtney up from the ground. Let's hide in the forest over there? Shi Xiaotian pointed to the side. Okay. Slender Waist Dance and Yu Tianshiming nodded, and the three of them walked over. Come and help. Gu Fei was furious. He was actually the weakest of the 4. In the forest, not long after putting Courtney down, she slowly woke up. It seemed like the system didn't dare to set her unconscious for 3 days and 3 nights to waste the player's time. Courtney's face became very pale, and her eyes lost their light. She looked at Gu Fei and asked, how did he die? The other 3 also looked at Gu Fei to see how he would explain how he cut off someone's arm. Gu Fei was very calm. I'll take you to see him. Can the body still be there? Shi Xiaotian and the others expressed their doubts. Maybe, Gu Fei said. Would you guys pick up that disgusting thing? Hey, don't say that. It's very pitiful. Slender Waist Dance was angry. I didn't mean it that way. I'm just stating the facts, Gu Fei said. After leaving the small forest, the 4 of them and the NPC headed in the direction of the cloud mine. The place where Angus was killed was already empty. Gu Fei and the others still hadn't found Angus. The boss-level NPC with 3 major classes had amazing eyesight, or it could be said that with the guidance of the system god, he suddenly sped up and ran in one direction. The 4 of them followed closely. Angus lay quietly on the ground. The severed arm was a bloody mess and his clothes were torn. It was obvious that the players had searched his equipment. Under the torn clothes, his abnormal rotten flesh was revealed. The expression on his face still retained the ferocious expression he had before he died. His hair was like withered grass and his eyes, which hadn't been closed in time, stared blankly at the sky, making people feel his helplessness and sadness. Courtney covered her mouth to prevent herself from making a sound, and just quietly cried. She suddenly squatted down and hugged Angus in her arms. She still didn't make a sound. The four of them quietly stood behind her. Chapter 752. The four of them looked at each other. They didn't know how to talk to the NPC in this situation. Luckily, a quest was still a quest. The system couldn't freeze the screen at this moment and keep loading, right? So after a moment of silence, Courtney finally turned her head. "Are you okay?" Gufei asked. He felt that it was a bit funny to have this kind of conversation with an NPC. In the end, he didn't fit in with the atmosphere of the game, so he couldn't get into character. Courtney seemed to understand the meaning behind Gufei's concern. She nodded and got up, still hugging Angus tightly in her arms. "What are you going to do?" Gufei asked directly. "Find a place to bury Angus." Courtney said softly. "Where to?" Gufei asked. "Cloud Suburb Lake." Courtney said. "We still have to go back there?" Gufei was startled. The meaning behind this sentence was something that Courtney obviously didn't understand. She didn't say anything else and walked in front with Angus' corpse. "What do we do if we run into a battle?" Gufei was depressed. The opponent's background was clear. They were from the four big guilds. Gufei couldn't underestimate the power of their combined numbers. "We don't even need to go to Cloud Suburb Lake. If they chase after us, we'll crash into each other." Yutian Shenming said. "I have a risky idea." Shi Xiaotian said. "Speak." Gufei said. "Let Courtney go by herself." Shi Xiaotian said. "Oh." Gufei was deep in thought. "Then wouldn't she be killed by the guild? Although she's very strong, I think she's still within the range of players who can kill her. She's not even as strong as Hei's assassin." Yutian Shenming said. "Indeed not." Gufei nodded. "If we go together and run into people from the four big guilds, they'll think of ways to ruin our quest. But if it's just the NPC, they might think that our quest isn't here anymore. What reason do we have to make things difficult for a powerful NPC?" Shi Xiaotian said. "I'm just afraid they won't think so because of that guy." Gufei was worried about Yi Xiaowu. That guy is from the game company. He's very familiar with the game's mission plot. Just like now, even we don't know if Courtney will have anything to do with us after burying Angus, but he definitely knows. "That's perfect." Shi Xiaotian smiled. "Sometimes it's not a good thing to know too much. If he thinks that he's infallible, he might even lead himself astray." "What do you mean?" Gufei said. "For example, if we don't follow Courtney, then we don't know what we can do next, but he will know. As long as there is a possibility that we can complete the quest without following Courtney, then he will think that we have taken this quest route. He will think that we have changed the direction of the quest," Shi Xiaotian said. "What if there isn't such a path?" Gufei said. "Parallel world quests always have a high degree of freedom. Different ways of doing things will lead to different quest routes. This has been proven by many players. Especially for such a complicated quest, it's impossible for it to be a single path. So I think it's entirely possible that there's a twist after this plot. Let's pretend like this," Shi Xiaotian said. "Are you two done discussing? Courtney is about to go far." Slim Waist Dance shouted. "There's someone over there." Yutian Shenming looked around and found something. "Who?" Gufei asked. "It stopped moving. I can barely see it from this distance. I think it's a marksman. It's a marksman who chased after us to observe our movements from afar," Yutian Shenming said. "Not a bad chance," Shi Xiaotian said. Gufei thought about it and finally nodded. "Let's do it this way." So the four of them didn't care about where Courtney went. They pretended that nothing had happened and walked in another direction. Their footsteps were firm and no one looked back. What's going on? There were only the three guild leaders left at Cloud Suburb Lake. After Gufei's group left, they didn't dare to chase after them too quickly, but they couldn't just let them go like this. After that, the three of them sent marksmen to track the direction in which they left. They observed their movements from afar and waited for an opportunity to act. The marksmen all kept their eyesight to the limit to observe. Apart from counting 5 people, they didn't find anything else. The guild leaders kept asking what was going on, and the scouts were a bit annoyed. What could they see from so far away? The guild leader's orders were to put safety first and just observe from afar. Now that they kept asking, if they didn't go forward and die, what could they find? There were still players who were brave and willing to sacrifice themselves. Just as a small scout was about to continue to follow and find out something even if he died, he suddenly realized that the other party had already split up. There were 4 people on one side and 1 person on the other. One of them was heading in their direction, while the other 4 were heading in another direction. Among the 4, there was a red shirt and a black robe. Of course, Qianli was with them. Guild leader, the latest situation is that they have split up. The news was quickly passed. Split up? What does that mean? 1 person and 4 people have split up. 1 person is heading in our direction, getting closer and closer. It seems like an NPC. The NPC seems to be heading back to Cloud Suburb Lake. Qianli and the rest are not with the NPC. Has the mission been completed? The 3 guild leaders were shocked. Yi Xiaowu said that once the mission was completed, the defending side would be in danger. Where did Qianli and the rest go? Sword Without Oath asked his subordinate. I don't know. Looking at the direction, it seems like they're heading toward the resurrection camp. After making this judgment, the scout was shocked. Fuck. Sword Without Oath jumped. Which resurrection camp? The one in the southwest corner. The defending players of the 2 camps that had been destroyed were too traumatized. When they heard the news, they panicked. Sword Without Oath knew that it was too late for their entire army to return now, so he quickly contacted the other guild leaders and told them that the defending players had made a move again. It seemed like they were preparing to launch a surprise attack on the resurrection camp. He told them to be careful and be prepared. The players were in an uproar. The 2 camps that had been destroyed were the defending players' own doing. At first, they were casually provoked by Gu Fei's sword demon, and the guards of the camps were treated as spies to be killed. Moreover, they were wiped clean. Such a big joke was too embarrassing to say. It was only these 2 camps that had such a big gap that the defending players took advantage of it. However, the remaining 5 camps were all guarded by elite guards. The defending players did not have many people, so how could they take over the other camps? Although they felt that this matter was exaggerated, no one dared to ignore the news jointly issued by the 3 guild leaders. Therefore, the various guilds dispatched their men to the resurrection camp in the southwest corner. The 3 guild leaders also continued to send out sharpshooters to follow Gu Fei's group of 4 from hundreds of meters away. The 3 guild leaders also knew that the defending players would not be able to take down the remaining 5 resurrection camps with their current strength. However, Qianli's group had such intentions. The 3 of them could not help but suspect that they had obtained some powerful reward from the quest just now. Almost at the same time, the 3 of them thought of what the knowledgeable Hongqian Yixiao had told them. The players of Moonlit Night City have completed the quest and received the help of the werewolf army. Could it be that there are NPCs helping them? The 3 of them looked at each other and shouted almost at the same time. Next, they quickly thought of Courtney's powerful combat strength. Could it be that Qianli's group had successfully obtained a group of forest guards? That would be a devastating blow to the attacking players. Quick! Look around and see if there are any NPCs gathering. The 3 guild leaders quickly began to dispatch their subordinates. The 3 of them did not forget to inform Countercurrent of all this messy news. They heard that this guy had just been killed by an honor kill. He must be in great pain, but there was no way he could escape from his troubles just like that. The 3 of them told Countercurrent half of their intention was to make things worse, to make things even more troublesome for Countercurrent. Did you add that guy as a friend? Unchung Mutsu asked. I'm contacting him, Unsworn Sword said. He knew who the guy Unchung Mutsu was referring to was. Yi Xiaowu, full of confidence, had come to stop Gu Fei again. In the end, he was killed by Gu Fei with a single slash before he could do anything. Yi Xiaowu felt quite depressed. After leaving the resurrection camp, he was slowly returning to Yunjiao Lakeside when he suddenly received a message from Unsworn Sword, asking him about 1,000 Miles Drunk's next move. Next step? That depends on how they interact with the NPCs. Didn't you send someone to scout? Yi Xiaowu asked. Of course. Currently, Qianli's group of 4 has split up with the NPCs. The NPCs are on their way back to the Cloud Suburb Lake, while Qianli's group of 4 is heading to the Resurrection Camp in the southwest direction. Unsworn Sword said. Yi Xiaowu was startled. Leaving the NPCs and heading to the southwest camp? What kind of plot was this? Were they going to the southwest camp, or were they going somewhere along the way? Yi Xiaowu thought about it carefully, not forgetting to ask, where did they go with the NPCs? They went to the cloud mine. Unsworn Sword hurriedly said. Cloud mine? Could it be? Yi Xiaowu was shocked when he heard this. He then connected the dots to the southwest camp and immediately came to a conclusion. Quick, gather in the direction of the cloud mine. Why do we have to go there? Unsworn Sword was startled. What kind of place was this? Listen to me. Yi Xiaowu was full of confidence. Unsworn Sword understood that this kid didn't want to reveal too much information about the mission. However, Unsworn Sword no longer doubted Yi Xiaowu's knowledge. At the Cloud Suburb Lake, Yi Xiaowu had told them about Courtney's route, and that Qianli's group would definitely come here to find this NPC. Unsworn Sword hurriedly passed on Yi Xiaowu's message to Uncheng Mutsu and Black Index Finger. Both of them had the same thought and didn't doubt it at all. The 3 guild leaders hurriedly led their troops to the cloud mine. Then why are the 3 of them going to the southwest camp? Unsworn Sword asked. Nothing much. It's just the shortest route back to the city. They're going back to the city to complete a plot, and then they'll head to the cloud mine, Yi Xiaowu said. What are they doing? Unsworn Sword asked. Yi Xiaowu didn't reply. Will you die if you say a few more words? Unsworn Sword was depressed. Sorry. Yi Xiaowu was very secretive this time, unlike when he helped the other party complete the mission in Fog City, because he felt that the situation was different this time. In Fog City, Qianli's drunkenness destroyed the other party's interests, so he felt that he could reveal some information to help them make up for it. But now, Yi Xiaowu felt that Qianli's drunkenness was unfair to the other guilds in Cloud City. If he revealed too much information, and allowed any guild to benefit from the city war, then it would be unfair to the other guilds. After thinking about it, he felt that he should say as little as possible. The current situation was not bad. As long as the other party realized the danger of Qianli's drunkenness, they would take it seriously and listen to him. If it's the southwest camp, then he'll probably go through the west gate, right? I'll organize some people to ambush him, Unsworn Sword said. That won't be of much help. His current mission has already been completed. You killing him will only save him a few steps. When he returns to the main city, he will receive the next order and still go to the cloud mine. I think you should save this time and quickly go to the cloud mine to make arrangements. Yi Xiaowu suggested. Unsworn Sword accepted this suggestion and urged his subordinates to move quickly. On the way, they would naturally meet up with Courtney. At first, everyone was very scared and prepared to run, but they quickly realized that Courtney was not hostile at all. She was just slowly walking while holding a disgusting corpse. Unsworn Sword hurriedly asked Yi Xiaowu about the situation, but Yi Xiaowu didn't care. According to the mission, don't worry about them. She won't attack you anymore. Yutian, how is it? Is there anyone watching? Gu Fei, who was walking on the road, asked Yutian Shenming about the situation. I'm following, I'm always here, Yutian Shenming said. Still the same people? Yes. This tale is very annoying, Gu Fei said. Why don't we put on another show? Shi Xiaotian said. Oh, Gu Fei looked at her. Shi Xiaotian walked to the leveling area on the side of the road, casually chatted with a player, then returned to the 3 of them. Let's use teleportation. Oh, what were you doing just now? Gu Fei was confused. Just chatting for a bit, just acting for those guys to see, Shi Xiaotian said. Acting for what? Gu Fei took out the scroll. How strange it is to suddenly fly while walking. Now that there's this process of coming into contact with people, if it was me, I would think, oh, the contact bought a scroll. Shi Xiaotian said. Too cunning. The 3 of them said in unison. Teleport. Shi Xiaotian didn't think much of it. The 4 of them teleported away, and the scout quickly reported the scene to the guild master. Sure enough, after the guild master listened to their detailed description and combined it with Yi Xiaowu's deduction, he came to a conclusion. They sped up the process, contacted the seller to trade for a teleportation scroll, and teleported back to the city. We have to hurry. Since they have this kind of thinking, they might even use the teleportation scroll to buy time, Yi Xiaowu said. Unsworn Sword was depressed. Can't you tell us what they're doing in the cloud mine? I really can't say. As long as you guys defend the cloud mine to the death and destroy them when they appear, then this line of communication will be broken, Yi Xiaowu said. Unsworn Sword had no choice but to act according to plan. But he had already privately informed the guild's trusted aides. When they reached the cloud mine, they had to dig 3 feet into the ground and study the place thoroughly. The 4 of them, who had used the scroll, appeared in the barren area again. From here to the Cloud Lake, there was naturally no disturbance at all. Are you sure they've already left? Gu Fei asked Shi Xiaotian. I'm sure. With so many people, it would be too conspicuous if they left. How many people would see them? Shi Xiaotian said. Then how do you know? If you happen to have some friends who are active in that area, you would also know, Shi Xiaotian said. Then where did they go? Gu Fei asked. How would I know? Listening to the direction of the description, it seems to be in the direction we left, Shi Xiaotian said. It can't be for Courtney, right? I hope not. At this time, Shi Xiaotian couldn't be 100% confident. She just hoped that her plan would work. Of course, her plan worked quite well. When the 4 of them went back to the Cloud Lake, Hawkeye's Yutian Shinming found Courtney. She was sitting quietly on the hillside, Angus's body lying in her arms. The 4 of them hurried over. Look, Angus, your favorite scenery is about to appear. When the 4 of them came to her side, they heard Courtney speaking softly to Angus. The 4 of them looked in the direction she was talking to, only to see the sky full of light, reflecting the reeds by the lake in a golden color, but the lake water was orange. When the wind blew, the lake rippled, and the sound of the reeds swaying entered their ears. Courtney had a smile on her face, her hand caressing Angus's face, gently closing his eyes. Slender Waist Dance's eyes were red. Shi Xiaotian looked elsewhere, and Yutian Shinming's expression made Gu Fei want to kill him. This guy was obviously fantasizing about hugging a beautiful girl and sitting here watching the scenery. In the reeds at the bottom of the hillside, there were some players lying in the middle, not daring to move, anxiously sending messages. Guildmaster, Qianli and the others are back. They're with NPCs now. What? The 4 guild masters were shocked. At this time, Upstream had already run to the cloud mine to meet up with the others. However, the 4 guild leaders were not so stupid, so they each left some people at the Cloud Lake. This was because this place had become a battlefield in this quest many times, so they felt that they should pay more attention to this area. So they left some people to observe the situation here. Of course, waiting for an opportunity to contact this Courtney and see if there was any quest was also a very important mission. Who would have thought that in the end, Qianli Drunk came and watched as Qianli Drunk met up with NPCs again? What's going on? The 4 guild masters all stared at Yi Xiaowu. You and Qianli Drunk are together? Unsworn Sword said. No wonder you're so clear about the quest, exchanging information with Qianli Drunk. Of course you know everything you should know. Against the Current said. A player with knowledge? You really know how to make our imagination run wild. Unchung Mutsu suppressed his anger. Cut the crap. Black Index Finger roared. With the 4 guild masters attacking, Yi Xiaowu didn't even have a chance to explain. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.